What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video and back with another format guide. The videos where I sort of go through, break down the forbidden and limited list for a given format and all the new cards that format added to the general card pool of the game. Today's format will be cat format, the format based around the SJC Indianapolis in August of 2009. And this is a format that is somewhat polarizing for a lot of people. A lot of people do not like this format at all. Some people really do like it. And I'm going to try and get into a bit about why that is and why it is so polarizing for different groups of people. But before that, let's just dive in to the sort of setting for this format, the context of it. And I think the best way to sort of dive into that is with the forbidden and limited list. Now, the forbidden limited list honestly did not change much from the previous format, which is TeleDAD format. Honestly, the only change here to the forbidden section is that one card was removed from it. So Chaos Sorcerer is now legal, which means that Chaos decks are playable. And I'm not going to spend too much time on what is banned here because it's not really relevant to playing the format itself, since these cards will not pop up in your games. But in terms of ones that are good to know that are gone, you don't have BLS or CED, so you don't have those like huge Chaos Boss monsters. You don't have Magician of Faith, which is kind of a weird card that's hit here, but I guess they did not want the spell recursion here. You don't have things like Disc Commander, so you can't get those loops where you just draw a bunch of cards. You don't have DMOC. You don't have Witch of the Black Forest, so you can't search out a variety of monsters here. No Tribe, no Sook as well. For the spells, Dark Hole's not in this format, and no hand rips are in this format as well, in terms of the spells at least, so no Comfy, Duo, or Forceful Sentry here. You don't need to worry about that. No Pot of Greed or Graceful. No Harvey Feather Duster, but there is Heavy Storm, so that is good to know about. Metamorphosis is also not in the format, so kind of a low power card in some other formats, but it's just not in this one here. Premat is not in the format, although Monster Reborn is for whatever reason, which we'll get into in the limited section of the video. Snatch and Change of Heart are both banned here, so you don't need to worry about those, but Brain Con and Mind Con are both legal, so you do need to worry about that. In terms of the traps, Call the Haunted, not in the format, so you don't need to worry about people just bring back monsters from their graveyard during your turn. IO gone, Exchange Spirit gone. I mean, a lot of all win cons are gone, so Exchange Spirit and Last Turn are both gone here. Ring Destruction gone, that's a big one, so you don't need to play around that. And Time Seal gone just for like shenanigans. Valentine Restrict is the only extra deck monster on the ban list here that's banned. So, that will be changing relatively soon, since it is the start of the 5Ds era. So synchro monsters are sort of, becoming very powerful at this point. But at this point, this was the only thing that they took out behind the shed. And the last things on this list, in terms of the forbidden stuff, are two cards that are actually not legal in the TCG at all. They have not released, so you don't have Temple of Kings or Sixth Sense to worry about here. That's going to do it for, I think, the big hits on the forbidden list here. Let's dive into the limited list, which I'll go into a little bit more in depth, because that is something that you actually will probably see a lot in your games. So I'm just going to go through this in alphabetical order here, and I'm going to go through like pretty much every card. I'm just going to touch on them sometimes, but I do think it is important to know what's on the limited list if you want to play this format, because that will come up in these games, right? These cards are not banned, so people can play them. So given a lot of these cards are very powerful, you need to know what to play around in your given game. So Break of the Magical Warrior, this thing is limited, so this is just a big body on a level 4 that you can use to pop back row. Not the most impactful thing in the world, but it is pretty good. Card Trooper also limited here, mainly for Troop Dupe Scoop reasons. This thing on its own is pretty good if you got a deck that likes to mill, and you get value by drawing when it's destroyed. So it's a nice card all around. Chaos Orc is back, so now you can make some chaos plays. So decks that want to banish Light and Dark, this can be good in those. We've got Cyber Dragon as well, limited to 1 copy. Obviously, this could be it more, but it is good to know about if you want that sort of extension. It's a free special summon, and then you can make a synchro play. So it's good to know about. And there is also a new card in this format that I'll get to later on that does make Cyber Dragon a bit more impactful against certain types of decks. We got DD Warrior Lady here, just a monster that can banish your opponent's thing if it attacks into it or is attacked. So good to know about. Dandelion here. This thing is now on the list. It was on the list in TeleDAD, but I don't think it was legal for TeleDAD, but it is legal here. So this thing could be good in certain plant decks, but it's not like widely played in this format, although you can do Debris Dragon shenanigans as well with it. But it's not quite as good as it will be in later formats. Still good to know about, though. Dark Arm Dragon is now limited to one copy. This was semi-limited beforehand, but they're just like, nope, this thing is too strong. We need to limit it. I think that makes sense. Good change. I like this band because it's just very, very good and centralizing and powerful if it ever comes down. But it is something that you need to worry about. So you need to keep track of your opponent's darks and graveyard to make sure they don't have 3 if you have something to stop that. We've got Elemental Hero Stratos here, can search out a lot of other heroes and make that engine tick. So very good card. Exodia and all of its given pieces are also limited here. That's mainly for flavor. Exodia is not that good in this format because the format is very, very fast paced. So you don't really have time to build an Exodia deck. But, you know, it is something that you can play if you want to. Bestiary here is limited now, so this does hit Gladbeast a bit, but Gladbeast can still access it pretty easily from the deck, so it's not like a death knell for Gladiator Beast, but it is something that does hit their consistency a little bit, and if you remove the one Gladiator Beast with something like Bottom Strap Hole, for instance, then they lose access to Skyzars, which can be pretty brutal for them. Next, we get Gorz, limited to one copy here. So this is a very powerful thing that you need to know about. Gorz is in this format, so if you are attacking directly, you need to potentially play around it. Marshmallow is in this format as well, just a staller here, which honestly does not matter that much. A lot of decks have ways to deal with things like this in this format, but it's good to know about. Mizuki is limited to one copy, which does limit the power of zombies a bit, but you know, it's still a good extender for zombies, so they can still play around with it. So zombie, I don't think will come up that often in this format, but it is something that if you do run into it, just know they've only got one Mizuki. Morphing Jar is limited in this format as well. Again, not many decks would play this thing. But for the decks that do like it, like for instance, burn decks, I guess, you know, they can play this thing, so you do need to worry about that. Greymole is limited to one copy as well. Again, not many decks play this because the format's a bit too fast-paced for it, and Greymole's more of a tempo card than anything. But it is something that you might need to worry about against certain decks. I can't really think of one that would play it, really, but it could run, you know, I don't know, like maybe in a Kawaki Meru Guardian deck or something. I don't know. But Night Assailant is limited to one copy. This thing kind of kills the potential of this card. It's generally good with 2, where you could like loop it back and forth, but only 1. It's not really worth mentioning here. It is a pop, so that's something, but there are better cards that do what it does. Plague Spirit Zombie is limited to one copy here, so there's only one of this, so you just need to worry about one of it. If your opponent uses up their one Plague Spirit, you don't need to worry about any more popping up unless they get Burial. Sangan here at 1, so you can search out anything from your deck with this. That's 1500 less attack, but it's at 1 copy, so once that 1 search is gone, you can recur it sometimes, but you just need to worry about the 1. Snipe Hunter limited to 1 copy here as well. Does this deserve it? I don't necessarily think so. Snipe Hunter can blow up your opponent's board if you get lucky, but it is kind of hit or miss. So, you know, this thing doesn't really see played in the most decks, but in decks that do want to offload their hand into the graveyard, I could definitely see it seeing play. Like if you manage to brew up an Inferni build, which you can actually start to make in this format, then you could play this, but that deck's not really that good, and I don't think Snipe Hunter is good enough to play in most decks. Reaper here is another stally card like Marshmallow that can get a hand rip. But if you bring this thing out and attack and try and rip into your opponent's hand, you're probably losing on the crackback. So it is kind of a hit or miss card in this format. And Treeborn Frogs here for Monarch decks, although again, you know, the format's very, very fast paced. I'm not sure Monarch can really keep up, but it's something to note here. For these spells, we get Advanced Ritual Art at 1 copy, so that does sort of hamper some decks that you could potentially brew in this format if this thing was at more. Something that I've seen thrown around is like playing decks with Black Salvo, where you bring back a milled Mechanical Chaser after going to Demise, which can do some funny things. But frankly, that's not really that good with only 1 of this. Next up, we got BrainCon, 1 copy, so you just need to worry about 1, but Mindcon is not a 1 copy, so you do need to worry about multiple of those, and that will become more and more relevant as synchros become a bigger and bigger thing in this format. But yeah, BrainCon, pretty good, can take your opponent's thing, potentially sync off with it, potentially attack in, and it does not have the errata that it once will, where you can't actually use it to take any monster that's face up that your opponent controls. It doesn't necessarily need to be a monster that can only be normal to set under set. Card Destruction here can allow you to cycle through your deck a bit quicker, but not many decks play it. Card of Safe Return is limited to 1 copy here. I believe it was semi-limited in TeleDAD, so this is good because there are a variety of decks that would abuse this, like Zombies, for instance, and also Amaryllis is now in the format, and Amaryllis plus Card of Safe Return is pretty cracked if you can set up that combo. E-Tele here is at 1 copy. So, you know, this thing was a centerpiece of the TeleDAD deck, and they wanted to limit the power of that, I guess, so they did limit this to 1. But I don't think that'll hurt a lot of like DAD decks. I think DAD is still strong in this format. It's just they lose access to the tele part of it as much. Fisher is at 1 copy along with Smash and Ground, just 1-for-1 removal. They wanted to hit this a while back, and it's still hit here. So are these things that good? Not really, but they are on the list. We got Future Fusion here. This thing can be crazy in certain decks, especially since dragons now have things that they can do in this format. And 5-headed dragon reveal off this is pretty crazy. But this thing is limited to very specific decks. In those specific decks, it's very good, but outside of that, it's a bit less good. TrueNade and Heavy Storm can deal with a ton of back row, which is very important given that there are a lot of OTK decks in this format, so these two can clear your back row and enable decks to get into it, so you do need to worry about these. Level Limit Area B is a card that can pair very well with TrueNade or Heavy Storm to sort of activate this and then set up for your OTK if you want to, but it could pair in stall decks as well. Limiter removal is a way for machines to OTK, but machines are not really that good in this format, so I doubt we'll see much play. Megamorph, honestly, this thing does not really need to be here. It can be used in very specific OTK strategies, but generally, you don't need this thing. Monster Gate is for Reasoning Gate decks. Reasoning is also on the list. Those decks are not really that good in this format, so these are kind of very niche cards that probably don't belong here. Reborn is also limited to one copy here. For some reason, they thought this was better to have in the format than Premat or Call of the Haunted. Maybe they were right about Premat, given TrueNade in Premat is very strong, but I feel like this thing is much more broken than Call of the Haunted. Being able to take from either your or your opponent's graveyard, potentially play around DD Crow that way, is very, very strong. So this thing is just absolutely busted, and this is played in most decks. MST for more spell and trap removal. Overload Fusion, this can pair with the Future Fusion that I mentioned earlier, but not many decks play this, and the decks that do, they kind of just have to hope to get lucky, and so they're not really the best decks in the format. Reinforce the Army back at one copy. And actually, it might have been at 2 for a while, but it was unlimited in TeleDAD. Now they're like, nope, this thing needs to be hit. And so this does limit the consistency of decks that you want to go for Stratos plays or things like that. But it's still a good card for those decks. Scapegoat here can allow you to stall a bit. I don't know, it's not really the best thing in the world, but it is something that you can play if you want to in this format. And given it's an OTK format, maybe you do want to play it to counteract those OTKs a bit. So maybe this is something that sees more play in the future. Although I will say one of the decks that can OTK can get around this pretty easily. So just be warned about that. Smash and Ground I mentioned with Fisher. Sword of Revealing Light also here can stall up the game a little bit. But again, a lot of decks have ways to deal with this sort of thing. So it's not really that good. United We Stand, just like Megamorph, probably doesn't need to be here. Yes, there are a lot of OTK decks in the forum, but they don't need United Stand or Megamorph to actually work. So, yeah, this thing's not really that good, but if you want just an attack boost, I guess you can play it. Ceasefire here to deal a bit of burn damage. Generally an anti-flip deck tech, but honestly, flip decks are not really that good in this format, so this thing doesn't really see much play. I guess if you want a bit of extra burn, you can do it, but not really that good outside that. Crush Card Virus is absolutely insane. This thing ends games. It does not have the errata text that you see on DB here. It just says that you get to tribute a dark monster with 1,000 or less attack, and then your opponent takes no damage, or no, not that. And then your opponent reveals what they've got in their hand and also what monster they have on field. You destroy any monster with 1,500 or more attack, and then for the next 3 turns, your opponent reveals the cards they draw, and if it's a monster with 1,500 or more attack, it's destroyed. So this thing is its old broken version, and it is absolutely toxic. It definitely dominates games. Although I will say, I still have the controversial take that Dust Shoot is more toxic than Crush Card Virus, and Dust Shoot's also at 1, so be warned about that. Although I will say more decks play Crush Card than Dust Shoot because Crush Card individually more powerful. It's just I find Dust Shoot a bit more toxic. Next up, we got Gravity Bind. This can stall out the game just like Swords, but again, those cards are not really that good in this format. Magic Cylinder here can do a bit of burn, but frankly, it's a bit slow, and also it relies on your opponent attacking in, and it's just not really that good. People can play around this pretty easily. Mirror Force is a card that is very, very strong if your opponent attacks into it without a Stardust up, and it can potentially swing the game around for you, so it's good to have and potentially play. Ojama Trio for burn decks mainly, but this can also stall up zones, but this card's a bit worse in this format because if you go Ojama Trio, your opponent can use that as synchro material, so this thing is not really that good in most decks, but I don't know, maybe some burn decks want to play it. Return is limited in this format. I forgot to mention on the ban part that Dimension Fusion bans, so you don't need to worry about that. You do need to worry about Return. Return's arguably more powerful in certain situations, but not many decks in this format do play it, so that is good to note. But the decks that would potentially play it, you should be aware of it. Transmutation Prophecy is at 1. Does it need to be 1? Probably not. It's kind of an anti, graveyard tech in a lot of decks, but DD Crow sort of supersedes this a lot of the time. So frankly, this card's not really something that you really need to be worrying about all that often. Dread's Tribute can blow up the board, so that is something that you actually do have to be worrying about a fair bit. Dust Shoot I mentioned earlier, and Wall of Revealing Light, another stall card just like Bind and Swords and Level Limit. Frankly, not really the best thing in the world. Now, as a note, there is the first hit synchro monster in this format, and that is Goyo Guardian. This does not have the errata here where you need an Earth Tuner. You don't need an Earth Tuner. Units do any tuner and any non-tuner that adds up to 6. And this thing is very, very strong. 2800 attack and taking a monster when it's destroyed by battle. Very, very good. It's a staple in most extra decks in this format. That's going to do it for the limited section of this video. Let's dive in to the semi-limited list and see what is hit there. Now, the semi-limited list holds some of the keys to why this format is so hated, but I'm just going to go through this in alphabetical order and touch on that when we get to it. So firstly, we got Mali, now semi-limited again. This thing was unlimited in TeleDAD, and that was a bit too much extension. So they semi-limited this thing, and I think that is for the best. Goblin Zombie at 2 copies as well. This made zombies a bit more consistent. So, having this at 2 makes some sense there. Green Baboon is at 2. I think this was previously at 1, but I guess they're sort of testing the water, see if this is okay to bring back. I think it is definitely okay to bring back. Even though beast decks are, seeing more play now, which is kind of funny. They don't really play this thing, and for good reason. Judgment Dragon is a boss monster for Lightsworn, very, very strong, but it is semi-limited, so it makes that a little bit less consistent for that deck. Mask of Darkness at 2. Honestly, this thing could be taken off because flip decks are a bit too slow here. A Necrophage also at 2. This is prevent sort of like degenerate banish strategies from seeing play. But frankly, I don't think those decks are like that good in this format. But you could potentially try and play it as like an off-meta pick. Ryza at 2 copies here. Now, semi-limited instead of limited. I think that's smart because Monarch's a bit too slow for this format to prosper. Next up, we got the 2 cards that I mentioned before, which kind of unlock the reason why people do not like this format, and that's Rescue Cat and Summoner Monk, both at 2 copies here. Now, in this format, you can do a pretty crazy play with Summoner Monk into Rescue Cat, going to double Xavier Arbellum, which we'll get into later in the video. And then synchroing off into the newly released Dark Strike Fighter, which if you've never heard of, count yourself lucky because that thing is very degenerate. It's a level 7 synchro that we'll talk about a bit later that can end games on its own. So this is sort of the dominant deck of the format at the time, and in further exploration in the modern day, while the deck stock has sort of like fallen a little bit, it's still very, very strong. And in the current tournament that we're having for Cat format on the YGO from Zero Discord server, this deck seems to be doing pretty well among the people that brought it. So this thing is very, very strong, and it's one of the sackiest decks in the game's history. And some people don't like that sort of style of gameplay. There are things you can do to play around it a little bit, but if they manage to go off entirely, then you're just out of luck, and that can be a bit annoying for certain people. So whether you like this format or not will depend on your tolerance for that sort of thing. But I do think it's still pretty fun to just, slam cards down fast and win the game. But, your tolerance will vary on that. But these 2 are very, very strong. And we'll be talking a bit more about the exact deck that makes them work later on in the video. Allure of Darkness is at 2 copies to restrict the power of dark decks. Chain Strike at 2. I think this was limited before, but they're bringing it back because burn is not really that good. You can play Chain Burn here if you want to. I don't really think it will do much for you. D-Draw at 2, to prevent the Destiny Hero decks from or decks that utilize that engine from really being as good as they once were. I don't think it's the most necessary thing in the world, but it does limit the power of those decks, so I think that is largely a good thing. Force Burial at 2 copies here. There are certain decks that can take advantage of it. With Mizuki now limited, there aren't as many decks that can really like pop off with it, but it's still good in certain ones. Gold Sarcophagus at 2 copies is what limited here, and this thing is not bad for certain decks. It's not really the best thing in the world for a lot of decks. It's a bit too slow in this format. I feel like I've said that a lot, but it's just true. Certain decks and cards are a bit too slow to deal with things like the Cat deck. But, if you're a deck that wants to play it, you can play it. Magical Stone Excavation, also 2 copies. The decks that really play this thing are not really in style. And I don't really think there are many good ones out there, but you can play it if you want to. Mind Crush now 2 copies here. I don't know why they're bringing this to more copies as opposed to less. This thing is also kind of toxic. But I guess maybe they figure that there are ways to stop, like, if you search out Summoner Monk, then Mind Crush can stop that. But frankly, there's probably other things that you can do to stop that instead. But there are certain decks that do want to take advantage of this. So it is good to know about. Maybe you have in the side deck for certain decks that search a lot as well. So it is a decent card in this format. Ultimate Offering is at 2 copies as well. I think this might have been limited beforehand, but I feel like they're realizing that the decks that really take advantage of this are not really as good in this format. And, it's sort of just like putting a hat on a hat a lot of the time. So this thing not really the best, but, if you play gadgets, maybe you like it, even though gadgets are not really that good in this format for a variety of reasons, which we'll get into. For the cards that were on the list and now are unlimited, Manticore of Darkness, unlimited. I think they've finally realized that this combo is a bit too pie in the sky. It's a bit too hard to actually set up. The combo would be like you just loop Manticore of Darkness infinitely and Card Safe Return draws you a bunch, but now Card Safe Return is limited. That's a bit less likely to happen here. Phantom of Chaos, also unlimited here. pretty good card in certain decks, but those decks I don't think are the best in this format. Twin Behemoth finally off the list. This thing was limited for a very long time, mainly for a rulings concern, but now they're just like, no, we're even bring this in their deck. And also, I think this might have been around the time where they ruled that you can only use the effect of it once per duel. I don't quite know. It might have been a later errata. But either way, this thing's off the list and it will do nothing. Book of Moon is at 3 copies now. Very, very fair card. I'm glad this thing is around. It can be a bit annoying because it's very powerful, even though it is very fair. But I think it is ultimately pretty good to have in the game, that is. I think everyone knew it was pretty good, but it's good that it's around at 3. Knock also at 3 copies here. I think this makes sense. It's not as overbearing, especially in this format where very few decks are just setting passing. So I do think this thing at 3 is pretty good. And that's going to do it for the limited and semi-limited list. Now, normally what I do here is I go into the new cards that were released, but I want to sort of touch on the cat deck here before we do that, just to sort of give a little bit more context for what this format is. I've been mentioning it a bit, but let's actually see how that deck looks. And the deck that I'm going to show off in that vein is the deck that Matt Hoey played to get to second place at the SJC Indianapolis event in August of 2009. And as you can see here, it's using the Summer Monks, it's using the Rescue Cats. This list does have some things that I think in hindsight would not hold up. Like, for instance, Doomcal is not really something that you'd want to play in this deck. And also there are some discrepancies between how this deck is versus like how we play the format. For instance, we do not have Dragoedia in the card pool. I'm like 99% sure based on my checking that we don't have it in the card pool, but it was there. So I'm not sure why exactly that is, but I go based on how Format Library defines the formats, and I'm pretty sure it's not in the format. So if it is, I'll make a correction later on. But yeah, so I think it might have been, well, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. But anyways, what this deck does is you bring out Summoner Monk, you pitch a spell, bring out Rescue Cat, go into double Xavier Airbellum, which is a level 3 tuner, which we'll get into later. You can attack directly with the Airbellums if your opponent's board is cleared and deal 3,200 damage and rip 2 cards out of their hand because Airbellum discards a card when attacks directly. And then you can go into the level 7 Dark Strike Fighter here and just show off this thing. It is a level 7 synchro monster that lets you tribute 1 monster to inflict damage to your opponent equal to its level times 200. You can do that multiple times per turn. It's not once per turn in this format, and that is pretty busted. It can also tribute itself to deal 1,400 damage on top of that. So basically the idea is you do a bunch of damage with your OTK, and then you bring that thing out, tribute your field, and do that last bit of damage there. So very, very strong deck. And I think if you wanted a good starting point, this would not be a bad list to start. Although, again, check the legality of Trag. I'm pretty sure it's not legal in this format. But we'll be diving into some other decks that you can play later on in this video. But now let's dive into the card pool and see how that looks. So with the magic of editing, I just briefly checked whether Trag was actually legal because I figured it made more sense if I just checked it now rather than just waiting until the video came out to check after the fact. And it is not legal in how we define the format. It was a prize card, or not a prize card, a promo card that for some reason we don't play with in this format. But that's good to know, and I could maybe see other versions of the format maybe playing with it, depending on whether they go by being able to use it or not. So just check with whatever event organizer you're doing for Cat format, whether they actually play with Trag or not. But anyways, we're diving into the new cards that are actually in this format. And start with that, let's go over the new archetypes that were introduced in the sets that were released. The main sets here are Crimson Crisis and Raging Battle, but there were some other sets, like side sets and things, that introduced some other things, which we will get into. But the big new archetype that came out in Crimson Crisis and then was expanded in Raging Battle was Blackwings. You know them, you love them. If you play Edison format, you're probably sick of them. But Blackwings are a very, very good archetype in this format, even in their initial waves of support. And in this format, one of the most powerful Blackwing monsters, Gale the Whirlwind, is unlimited. So you can play 3 of this, which does make Blackwing a bit better. And by a bit, I mean a lot better. This thing is a very, very dominant deck in this format. And to explain why, let's talk about what the deck actually does. Now, the deck doesn't have too many monsters, but unlike a lot of other archetypes, all the monsters in it are really good. Well, all except one, which we'll also get into. And also, on top of that, they're all very, very searchable off of the continuous spell Black Whirlwind. There's a continuous spell that says, when a Blackwing monster normal summons to your field, you can add 1 Blackwing monster from your deck to your hand with less attack than that monster. So if you activate this thing and summon out the Blackwing that you're probably playing with the highest amount of attack, which is Blackwing Sirach of the Dawn, which is very easy to summon out because it is a level 5 monster, but if your opponent controls a monster, you can normal summon set this card without attributing. And this thing has 2,000 attack, so you can pretty much search out any other Blackwing monster that you would need. And you basically can do this every turn as long as Blackwing Whirlwind remains on field. So you can summon out Sirocco the first turn, Shura the next, etc. And on top of that, they have really, really good abilities that can stack and just be very, very good. Especially if you get a lot of them out on the field, which they can do quite easily. Sirocco has the effect that says once per turn during your main phase 1, you can target one Blackwing monster you control, and until the end of the turn, it gains attack equal to the combined attack of all Blackwing monsters currently on the field except for itself. Also, for the rest of the turn, you can only attack with that monster. So this is a very, very good effect. It can buff things up and potentially go for lethal in a way that plays around things like Gores in a Blackwing mirror match. So if your opponent is on Blackwings as well, you can gain the attack of all your opponent's Blackwing monsters as well, which is very, very strong. And this thing is just absolutely cracked. Its effect is not the main reason that makes it cracked. The main reason is that you can normal summon or set it without tributing, and also Whirlwind basically allows you to search out anything else as long as you summon out Sirocco there. But the next highest attack on a Blackwing is Shura the Blue Flame, which you often summon out. If you're going first and your opponent doesn't have any monsters, this is the thing you summon out for Whirlwind if you can. There's an 1800 attack point monster that says when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can spell summon one Blackwing monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck, but it's effective or negated. But that doesn't necessarily matter if you're bringing out something like Gale the Whirlwind, which is a tuner, which can then allow you to go into a level 7 with the Shura and the Gale, or maybe even a different level with some of your other Blackwings too. So that is very, very good. Just gets more Blackwings on the field, which is very nice. Next up, we got Bora the Spear. It's a level 4, 1700 attack, 800 defense point monster. It says if you control a Blackwing monster other than Blackwing Bora the Spear, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if it attacks a defensive monster, inflict piercing battle damage. So this is an extension because you get to special summon it out. So, you know, I was mentioning how Sirocco needs a bit of other Blackwings to do this effect. But if you special summon out Bora and then boost it with Sirocco, that pierces into your opponent's monster that's potentially set and plays around Gores that way. It's very, very strong. If your opponent has something like a Spirit Reaper or they've got Scapegoats on field, then this is what I mentioned where like you can just pierce into it very easily and just kill your opponent through that anyways with things like Bora and with some of their Synchro monsters as well, which we'll get into in a second. But this thing is very, very good. Gale the Whirlwind is arguably the best Blackwing out right now, which is saying something because all the Blackwings are pretty good, but this, just like Bora, can special summon itself out from hand if you control a Blackwing monster other than Blackwing Gale the Whirlwind, and you can special summon this card from your hand. But yeah, that's what I mentioned. And then once per turn, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, and that target's attack and defense becomes half its current attack and defense. Now, since this is a tuner as well, what you can do is special summon this thing out, have an opponent's monster, and then just synchro summon off with the Gale into a big monster that can beat over it. And there are plenty of Blackwings you can go into quite easily with the level 3 stat line here. If you want to go into a 7, like let's say you've got a 4 on your field, then you can go into Blackwing Armor Master, the level 7 Wing Beast, 2500 attack, 1500 defense. It says made with one Blackwing tuner and one non-black or tuner monster. Cannot be destroyed by battle, and you take no battle damage from attacks involving this card. At the end of the damage step, if this card attacked a monster, you can place one wedge counter on that monster, max 1, and then you can remove all wedge counters from your opponent's monster. The attack and defense of the monsters that have the wedge counter becomes 0 until the end of this turn. That effect doesn't often come up because it's a big guy. 1200 attack, it's a lot of attack. And your opponent's probably not going to attack into it with one of their monsters because it's not destroyed by battle. You take no battle damage with it. So this thing, it's just kind of a good monster to bring out. It's hard for your opponent to deal with. And it's a Blackwing as well. So it pairs with the other Blackwings too. Also, if you want a level 6, like let's say you've got Clute the Moonshadow here, which is level 3, which I'll get into in a second, then you can go into Blackwing Armwing, which just like Bora can pierce into your opponent's monsters. It's made with one Blackwing tuner, one non-tuner monster, 2300 attack. If this card attacks a defensive monster, it gains 500 attack during the damage step only and inflicts piercing battle damage. So this is basically 2800 damage coming in to a defensive monster. And that can be very good in certain situations. You won't always go into this, just like you won't always go into Armor Master. But in situations where you want them, they are here. So it's another tool in the toolbox that Blackwings basically uniquely can access. Because while Gale is very good, and other decks do sometimes play it because it search Blast Sangan and can have an opponent's monster. Generally, you know, you're not going to have the most opportunities to play it and go into these things, as much as Blackwings will at least. Next up, we got Clute the Moonshadow, which is, you know, another very, very powerful monster. Level 3, Wing Beast 4, 1800 attack, 1000 defense. So during the damage step, when your Blackwing monster battles, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. That monster gains 1400 attack until the end of this turn. So basically like Honest for Blackwings. Not quite as good as Honest, of course, but it's still very, very good. And this is just a great thing to search off of Whirlwind as well. Whirlwind basically allows you to just search different things depending on what you need. If you need more extension, you can search out Bora, you can search out Gale. If you need to get over a thing or just protect your monsters from battle, you can search out Kalute. Just so many good things you can search off Whirlwind, which is why I talked about it first when discussing this archetype. And it's just absolutely crazy the things you can do with all that. Blizzard Far North is the last Black-Wing monster, and this is sort of another way to extend and go into synchro plays. The level 2 can't be special summoned, so you can't bring it out off of Shura. And when this card normal summon, you can target one level 4 lower black monster in your graveyard, special summon that target in defense position. So you can go into a level 6 very easily, into, your armed wing, right? You can go into a Goyo with that. You can even go into a level 5 if you want to bring up something like Kalute, right? You can go into Magical Android or something like that. So, it's just very, very good lineup of Blackwings here. Very, very strong stuff. And, the other Blackwing supports are not really that good. The one monster that is kind of underwhelming is Blackwing Elf and the Raven, level 6, 22 attack, 1200 defense. Said if you control a Blackwing monster, you normal summon this card without attributing, and then when this card is normal summoned, you can target one monster opponent controls, change that target's battle position. So that can come up here and there, but it's not really the best. Generally, the way you want to extend when you already have a Blackwing monster is by special summoning out another. But I guess this can get like everything that you'd want off Whirlwind. So, and its effect could come up sometimes. It's just not really that good, or at least not good enough to see play in most Blackwing decks, at least in the modern versions of them. For their support spell and traps besides Whirlwind, they're also kind of in a bad spot. Delta Crow Anti-Reverse is actually pretty decent, probably the best of them. The normal trap that says, if you control a Blackwing monster, destroy all face-down spell and traps your opponent controls. If you control exactly 3 Blackwing monsters, you can activate this card from your hand. So something you could potentially do is go Black Whirlwind, summon out Shiroko, search out like a Abora or a Gale, and then if you have another one of those in hand, special summon an Abora into Gale, and then you've got 3 monsters on field, and then you can activate the Delta Crow, blow up your opponent's back row, and get in for tons of damage. The downside of that is that a lot of the ways that people deal with Blackwing is they hit the summon, because if you summon out one of these and it's interrupted off something like Bottomless, for instance, or Torrential Tribute or something, the Whirlwind will not get a search. So if that happens, you can't even set up your play, and you can't really use this. But if you set this thing in advance and then summon out a Blackwing, then you can potentially use it. So that is something that you can consider to deal with your opponent's back row. It's just there are generally other back row cards that can deal with it better. But if you're up against a deck that has heavy back row, this might be worth considering. All right, next up we have Against the Wind. The normal spell says select one Blackwing monster in your graveyard, take damage equal to the attack of the selected monster, and add it to your hand. Now, this thing isn't bad. Especially because if you're trying to get aggressive, you don't really care about the damage you're taking there. But generally the ones that you really want to bring back are like Gale and, Kalute. You've got Dark Explosion for that if you really want it. That doesn't cost life points. And I can't really think of like too many situations where like you're really hard pressed on having a Blackwing. Especially because Whirlwind's just so good at searching them out, and this thing is at 3. So generally you don't even need Against the Wind. I get why it could potentially be played to recur certain powerful effects, but I don't really think it's necessary. Next up, we've got Raptor Wing Strike. There's a spell card that says shuffle one Blackwing monster you control into the main deck, add one Blackwing monster from your deck to your hand. This is just completely not necessary. Whirlwind is just better than this in every single way. So this thing, no reason to really play it. Next up, we got Fake Feather. The normal trap that says send one Blackwing monster from your hand to the graveyard and select one normal trap in your opponent's graveyard. The effect of this card will be the same as that selected normal trap card. This thing can be like interesting. It's kind of like Grave Robber, except, without as much of a cost. But it's very situational. So generally, you want things that are less situational rather than more situational, because it just gives you more options more of the time. And this thing, if your opponent doesn't have a trap, which a lot of decks are very light on traps, then this thing is not really that good. But it is an interesting card. Maybe in different metas it would see play, but in this one it does not. Next up, moving up to our next new archetype here, we got the X-Sabers. Now, the X-Sabers don't really have much of anything to build a dedicated deck to them. They've got Airbellum, which I mentioned earlier, where it's 1600 Beast Tuner, level 3, and if it inflicts battle damage to your opponent by direct attack, discard one random card from your opponent's hand. Now, the Beast and level 3 aspects of this make it really, really good in Rescue Cat decks, and that's kind of its main purpose. The rest of the X-Saber archetype is not really as good, as you can see from Galahad and Anu Piranha. So Galahad is a level 4 warrior, 1800 attack, 800 defense. Says if this card attacks an opponent's monster, this card gains 300 attack during the damage step only. If this card is attacked by an opponent's monster, it loses 500 attack during the damage step only. And when this card is selected as an attack target, you contribute another Saber monster to negate the attack. So basically the idea of this is you have it and you get in over your opponent's monster because it can be pretty beefy on its own, and then you protect it by triggering your other things. But frankly, that's not really as good in this format where there's just so many decks that are just blowing you out of the water. so quickly. So this thing is not good enough in my opinion. Next up, we got Onupron, which is a normal monster. It is an X-Saber, so it can pair with things like Galahad and Gotham's Emergency Call, which we'll get into in a second. But frankly, it's not really that good. And building a dedicated X-Saber deck in this format is kind of an exercise in futility. The deck just did not have pieces to actually make it work here. They do have a synchro monster, though, and that's X-Saber Urbellum. It's a level 7 warrior, 2200 attack, 1300 defense. It says when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent while they have 4 or more cards in their hand, you should place 1 random card from their hand on top of their deck. So this can sort of draw lock your opponent, but frankly, they've already got that many cards in hand. They probably have options to deal with what you're doing here. That doesn't stop us from seeing play in certain decks, and it is another option for level 7 that certain times will be able to win you the game. Like, let's say your opponent is in a really bad spot, they just have a bunch of monsters or whatever in hand that they can't really do much with. Urbellum's a great way to just keep them in that spot and deprive them of resources, and so it can be very good. It's just not really the best a lot of the time. Next up, we've got Gotham's Emergency Call, which I mentioned earlier. It says if a face-up X-Saber monster is on the field, target 2 X-Saber monsters in your graveyard. Special summon both to your side of the field. So this is why something like the Saber name is pretty good. So if you have Anu Piranha, even though it's a normal monster, you can go for Gotham's, bring back double Urbellum, and then go into a 7 off that. So it's something, but like, frankly, this is not what the deck needs right now. We'll get more and more support over time, so this thing will get better. But right now, the deck is lacking a lot of tools that it needs. It just was not really a supported archetype right out the gate, unlike an archetype that was basically only supported right out the gate, which is Assault Mode. Now, calling this thing an archetype is kind of loose. It's kind of like a series of monsters instead of like an archetype, but it is a thing that you can play if you want to. Basically, the idea of this is we've got this powerful, summoning technique in the form of synchro summons. We got this brand new type of monster. What if we can level it up to something even more powerful? And that's where the assault mode monsters come in. However, in going forward this strategy, I think Konami or whoever was doing the research to come up with this archetype or series or whatever you want to call it, sort of missed the boat on why synchro monsters are so good. It's not necessarily the effects of the synchro monsters, it's the accessibility of them. And this kind of really takes that idea and ruins it. So Assault Mode activates a normal trap that says tribute 1 synchro monster and then spell summon 1 Assault Mode monster whose name includes the tribute monster's name from your deck in attack position. So let's say you bring out a Stardust Dragon. You can tribute that Stardust Dragon with Assault Mode activate to go to Stardust Dragon Assault Mode, which is a better version of Stardust Dragon. And frankly, this is the only version of Assault Mode that could potentially actually see play, right? There have been attempts to make this deck work throughout the game's history, and sometimes those attempts are more successful than others. Maybe it could even work in this format. I don't quite know. But this is frankly the only really good assault mode here because this effect actually is kind of cracked. It's got 3000 attack as well, which, all the assault mode monsters have a bit of an attack boost over their base form by 500 attack. I'm pretty sure all of them have that 500 attack boost. And it must first be special summoned with assault mode activated and can't be special summoned by other ways except by its own effect. And when a card or effect is activated, you can tribute this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. And note that's a bit of an upgrade from Stardust Dragon because instead of just negating the effect that destroyed something, this can negate anything, any effect. And then it comes back just like Stardust Dragon does in the end phase. So this thing is absolutely crazy. And then if it is somehow destroyed on field, you can actually target 1 Stardust Dragon in your graveyard, special summon that target. Now, all the assault mode monsters have that effect, so it's not the craziest thing there. But the thing that makes this thing so good is just like the lockdown potential of it, right? You can just stop your opponent from being able to activate effect once per turn. Keeps coming back, so it's very annoying for your opponent to deal with. There are ways they can deal with it, like DD Crow on this thing is pretty good. But this thing is just very, very annoying to deal with in the right circumstances. And it's 3k attack, so it's a very, very big monster on top of that. So very, very good card all around. Probably the best assault mode monster. It's all downhill from here. Let's talk about Colossal Fighter Assault Mode. This was a TCG exclusive, I think the only TCG exclusive for the Assault Mode cards. And this was a 3300 attack, 1500 defense point warrior monster, which is special summoned by attributing Colossal Fighter with Assault Mode activate. And when this card is special summoned, you can send up to 2 warrior type monsters from your deck to the graveyard. So it boosts up its attack a little bit more. Because just like Colossal Fighter says, all monsters opponent controlled lose 100 attack for every warrior type monster in your graveyard. So actually that's a little bit different from Colossal Fighter, which gained the attack. So this is a bit worse than Colossal Fighter because let's say you want to get in for a ton of damage directly. Colossal Fighter will have more attack than, this thing, which just decreases the opponent's monsters. So that's kind of bad. And then it also does not have the protection from being destroyed by battle, because Colossal Fighter, when it's destroyed by battle, you can bring it back because you get to target a warrior monster in the graveyard, either graveyard, I'm pretty sure, and bring that thing back. Here, when it's destroyed, you get to special summon one Colossal Fighter from your graveyard. So I will say it does replay itself better than Colossal Fighter if it's destroyed by card effect, so that's something. But frankly, this thing is not really that good. I guess the Foolish Burial aspect of it could be decent, but frankly, Warriors is not a deck that like can really take advantage of that as much as other decks can. So I don't really think this thing is worth playing. It's just a really, really bad payoff that is arguably worse than the monster that you're trading for it. Next up, we've got Red Dragon Archetype Assault Mode. So we're going through all the Duelist Genesis Synchro monsters here and trying to buff them up to make success. This is a 3,500 attack point dragon, which is brought out by tributing a Red Dragon Archfiend for Assault Mode activate. And after damage calculation, if this card attacked, you destroy all other monsters on the field. And then when this card is destroyed, you can target one Red Dragon Archfiend in your graveyard, special summon that target. Now, just like with Colossal Fighter, I get what they're going for here. Like, they're trying to adjust the effect slightly to make it better. Because this destroys all monsters on the field. So Red Dragon Archfiend just destroyed the defense special monsters your opponent controls. Here, everything's getting destroyed. So on paper, that would seem a bit better. But oftentimes it is worse because oftentimes you're going into Red Dragon Archfiend to deal with your opponent's defenses and then getting in with your other monsters to either close out the game or deal a bunch of damage. Here, you can't do that because you attack in, all your monsters are gone as well, and so it's a bit rough. Maybe if you're playing with other Assault Mode monsters and you've got two of these out on field, attack them with Red Dragon Archfiend Assault Mode, destroy your Assault Mode monster, then bring back the Synchro monster from grave. But that's a bit pie in the sky. It's not really that good. And yeah, this thing is just pretty bad. Pretty doggone bad. Moving on away from the Duelist Genesis Synchros to some of the slightly more obscure Synchro monsters, which honestly I'm not even sure why they made Assault Modes for. We had Doomcutter Dragon Assault Mode. This is made by tributing Doomcutter Dragon with Assault Mode activate. And when this card is spell summon any number of zombie type monsters from either player's graveyard to your side of the field. Now that is a pretty good effect. Those monster effects are negated and they are destroyed during the end phase of this turn, but frankly, you don't really care about that too much because zombies can do a lot with those monsters while they're on the field. And then when this card on the field is destroyed, you can summon one Doomcutter Dragon from your graveyard. So on paper, that seems like a pretty great effect because, you know, you're basically doing what zombies wants to do. You're bringing back a ton of guys and making plays with them. And if you manage to pull it off, it is pretty good. However, it's just kind of like awkward in the deck. Zombies kind of want to streamline their combo engine into something that can be a bit more consistent. By playing Doomcutter Dragon Assault Mode, you're just adding more bricks to your deck, which, by the way, is arguably the worst factor in Assault Mode monsters, is that they're main deck monsters, they're in your deck, and you've got Assault Mode activate here, which is kind of hard to search. There are ways to do it. But so you need both a trap from the main deck, and you need your monster to actually be in the main deck, because if it's in your hand, you can't actually bring it out. So it makes things very, very awkward. And in a deck like Zombies, that really does want to streamline their combos more, having this thing is not really what the deck wants, even though it is a very, very powerful effect if you pull it off. Next up, we got Hyper Psychic Blaster Assault Mode. This is based on actually a new Synchro monster from the sets here, which is Hyper Psychic Blaster, which actually, let's just talk about this thing briefly. This is a level 9 Psychic Synchro monster, so I believe the first level 9 Synchro in the game, and made with one tuner and one or more non-tuner Psychic monsters. It's got 3,000 attack, 200 defense, and it says if this card attacks a defensive monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent at the end of the damage step. If this card attacks a defensive monster, and that monster's defense is lower than the card's attack, use original values if the other monster is no longer on the field, you gain life points equal to the surplus. So just like all the other Psychic Synchro monsters up to this point, they do something that gains you back the life points that you've probably lost from the other Psychic monsters or Psychic cards. So I think this is a pretty good card. 3k attack is pretty decent, although it's a bit less good than something like Thought Roller Archfiend. Obviously, it is a decent monster that Psychic can go into as another boss. Hyper Psychic Blaster Assault Mode is brought out with Assault Mode activate by triggering the Hyper Psychic Blaster. And if this card battles a monster at the end of the damage step, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's defense and gain life points equal to its attack. So a bit of a different effect. I think a better effect overall because you're dealing damage to your opponent. On top of that, it's got 3,500 attack, which is a bit annoying to get over. And when it's destroyed, it brings back Hyper Psychic Blaster. So I do think this is one of the better Assault Mode activate monsters. However, you know, it's kind of like Zombies. Like, why are you playing this, right? Like, what are you getting out of it that makes it worth playing all the bricks that you're playing in your deck to go into this, right? I would say that decks trying to build into Hyper Psychic Blaster are not really the best in the first place. Like, you can see some success in them. People have been trying to lab out, like, Psychic combo decks that go into this thing and boost it up with Mind Master, bringing out Psychics that can actually boost it up and stuff. So that's kind of neat, and you can potentially do stuff with that. But, like, in a deck like that, you really don't want to be playing Assault Mode Activate and setting up a Hyper Psychic Blaster assault mode play, right? You want to be doing other things. And so this thing is just not really good on a variety of levels, even though it is a better effect than its base synchro. Next up, we got Archetype Magician Assault Mode, and this is probably the worst assault mode monster, which is saying something, but I do believe it. This is a spellcaster of 900 attack, 2000 defense, and it's based off the new synchro monster, Archetype Magician, which is actually a really good synchro monster. It's level 7. It's 400 attack, 800 defense, and made with 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuner spellcaster monsters, so you need some of those. But a lot of decks have access to them. Like Summoner Monk, for instance, is a spellcaster that you can make with it. So if this card is synchro summon, you get to place 2 spell counters on it. This card gains 1000 attack for each spell counter on it, and then you can remove 1 spell counter from your field and target 1 monster or 1 card your opponent controls, destroy that target. So you can use this in a variety of ways. It could just be a big guy with 2400 attack. It could be a guy that you bring out, pop 2 cards on field, and leave it at that. But it is very flexible. You can also pop 1 thing on the field and then keep a counter for later, right? There are a lot of different things you can do with Archetype Magician, which make it very good. And I think that Archetype Magician Assault Mode kind of takes away a lot of that utility. Made by tributing the Archetype Magician with Assault Mode activate, and when this card is special summoned, you can place 2 spell counters on it, gain 1000 attack for each spell counter on it, just like the original. And then you can remove 2 spell counters from this card, destroy all cards your opponent controls. And then when this card on the field is destroyed, you can special summon 1 Archetype Magician from your graveyard. So on the face of it, that's pretty good, right? You can wipe away your opponent's entire field, which is a very powerful effect if you're able to pull it off. And you can even do that after using the 2 pops off your original Archetype Magician and then bring this thing out. However, in a format like this, your opponent is likely not going to have a huge field, right? I would say at any given time, they probably have like 3 to 4 cards at max, and that's at max. Unless they're playing a very, very heavy back row focused deck. And if they're playing that, they can probably stop this play before it even happens. But let's say they're playing a field with 3 to 4 cards on it, and they don't have a way to stop you going into Arcanite and Archetype Magician Assault Mode. So you bring out Archetype Magician, maybe pop 2 cards with it because you're going to do the assault play, and then you bring out Archetype Magician Assault Mode, and you pop 1 card in your opponent's field. Or you potentially attack into that 1 card they've got because maybe you've gotten rid of their back row and it's just a monster, and then you've got a 2900 attack point guy. So it's just a guy sitting there with 2900 attack. Your opponent's not really going to play too much into it because they know its effect is online. Or they're going to just bait it out by setting a bunch of cards and then, baiting this effect out, right? So, like, it can put your opponent in kind of an awkward spot, but frankly, it's not really getting too much more value than a regular Archetype Magician would do. And also, unlike pretty much all the other assault mode monsters here, when they bring back their synchro monster, they're actually getting some value off it. I'd say the one that probably does the least is like Doomkaiser Dragon, because that, only brings a monster from your opponent's grave when synchro summoned, I believe. So this would be like the one case where it doesn't really get as much value, but it's still a 2400 guy, right? Archetype Magician Assault Mode, though, if you bring back Archetype Magician, it only gets the counters when it's synchro summoned. So you're bringing this thing back with no counters on it. So it's just a weak monster. So like what are you doing with it, right? It's just very, very tough to justify actually playing this thing. Now, there are some spell counter support stuff in the products released around this time. So I will be talking about them later as well. So there is potential for maybe being able to replace some of the counters on this thing. But frankly, it's just a bit too rough to actually make work. And that's why I think it's the worst of the assault mode monsters. But let me know in the comments down below which assault mode monster you think is worse. It would be interesting to see that. Anyways, next we move on to the assault mode support cards, which can sort of set up your assault mode plays and do things with assault mode activate, like search it out. For instance, the form of Assault Beast. This is a beast warrior that you get to discard to the graveyard to add 1 assault mode activate from your deck to your hand. Now, this is a 1900 attack as well, which can come up if you already have assault mode activate. Not a bad monster to have around. It's a big guy. But this is your main way of searching out the assault mode activate, and probably the best way to do that. You also have Arcane Apprentice, which is a level 2 fire spellcaster tuner, 1000 attack, 400 defense. If this card's sent to the graveyard for a synchro summon, you can add 1 assault mode activate from your deck to your hand. So basically, the idea with this, you synchro summon with this thing to get the assault mode activate to hand, and then you're all set for your next play. However, this thing is not really that good at setting up for your assault mode synchro plays, because the 1 level 6 monster here that you can assault mode into is Doomkaiser Dragon, which can only be made with Plague Critter Zombies. So you can't bring that out. If you want to go into Archetype Magician Assault Mode, that needs a level 5 spellcaster or spellcasters, which is kind of hard to set up. Hyper Psychic Blaster needs 7 levels worth of Psychic Monster, which you can potentially do if you have like Psychic Life Transfer or something. But it's still kind of a hard ask. And then all the level 8s here, you need 6 levels on top of that. So it's kind of hard to set up an Assault Mode play with Arcane Apprentice. But you could do it. You could also just set up for a later turn, just bring out a generic synchro that you're not necessarily planning on activating, but you just have around. But this thing is pretty rough, I think. Next up, we got Nightwing Sorceress, which is kind of a card that no one really needed in the deck. It says you can activate Assault Mode, activate the turn set. So I guess the idea is you bring this thing out, and let's say you want to get, Stardust Dragon Assault Mode online right now, this turn. Then you potentially do that. But it's just like most of the time you're fine waiting a turn to activate Assault Mode activate. I know that I said this format's like pretty fast, and you do need to be acting fast. But like having an Assault Mode monster this turn versus the next turn, it's not really going to be that good, except for maybe in the case of Doomkaiser Dragon Assault Mode, where you can actually combo off and do your plays with it. But again, it's like zombies, you're adding another brick to that deck on top of the bricks that you're playing to make Doomkaiser Dragon Assault Mode work. So it's like, it's a bit rough there. Next up, we've got Assault Mercenary, a level 4 Earth Warrior, 1800 attack, 300 defense. Says once per turn, you can return 1 Assault Mode activate from your hand or graveyard to the deck to destroy 1 spell or trap your opponent controls. So this is basically a way to utilize your Assault Mode activate, get a little bit more advantage out of it after you've used it. But frankly, it's not really that good. I mean, you kind of want to clear away your opponent's back row before you commit to an Assault Mode activate monster. Whereas here you're kind of doing it after the fact, unless you want to return it from hand, in which case, like, what are you doing? You're not getting your big boss monster out. So like, it's kind of awkward there. It's got a decent stat line though. So if you want to play it, you can. It's just not really the best in my opinion. But we've got a lot more support cards to talk about beyond that, because monsters are well and good, but we also have some more spells and traps that you can do. I'd say Assault Counter is actually like pretty decent for the deck. It's a counter trap that says activate only while you control an Assault Mode monster, negate the activation of a spell card, trap card, or effect monster effect, and destroy it. So that actually is pretty strong. It's kind of like Stardust Dragon Assault Mode, where you're locking down what your opponent's doing. Although, again, as I mentioned, Assault Mode kind of wants to be playing Stardust Dragon Assault Mode as their main thing anyways. So like, do you need Assault Counter on top of that? Probably not. But it's something that you can potentially play if you want to. Assault Slash is a normal trap that says activate only while you control Assault Mode monster. Destroy all face-up monsters on the field, including the Assault Mode monster. However, this will then trigger the Assault Mode monster and bring back your Synchro monster. So, on the surface, it could be good. Like, I don't know. It's not really the best thing in the world, I'd say. This thing is just kind of like, what did you even do all that for? You just did it for a board wipe? So you summoned out Synchro monster, treated it with Assault Mode activate, brought out the Assault Mode monster, and then you activate Assault Slash to blow up everything and bring back that Synchro monster again. It's like, it's a lot of steps to do something that's like kind of underwhelming and situational. I mean, not underwhelming, because if you actually pull it off, very good. But it's just kind of like a lot of hoops you have to jump through to actually pull it off. And what you end on is not really the best. Next up, we got Assault Revival, a quick play spell that says remove from play 1 Assault Mode activate from your graveyard. Destroy all monsters you control, plus summon 1 Assault Mode monster from your graveyard, ignoring its summoning conditions. Its effect is negated and cannot be attributed if it is removed from field, removed from play. So this kind of like gets rid of the point of a lot of the Assault Mode monsters. It's just reducing them to their attacks, basically. It's just a beat stick. And destroys all your monsters to do it. So like, is that worth it? Probably not. Something you can play though if you just want to use these as the beat sticks. They realistically probably are most of the time. Next up, we got Assault Teleport. This is a normal spell that says return 1 Assault Mode monster from your hand to the deck, draw 2 cards. That's actually very good for the deck because, as I mentioned earlier, you need to have the Assault Mode monster in your deck to actually use Assault Mode activate. So this both sets that monster into the deck and also draws you 2 more cards, potentially drawing in 2 ways to search out Assault Mode activate. So, that I think is pretty good. Next up, we've got Assault Overload, a quick play spell that says retribute 1 Assault Mode monster, inflict damage to both players equal to its level times 200. And if you look at these levels, they are pretty high. I believe they're always like 1 or 2 above the original level. I could be wrong about that. Let's see. Stardust Dragon Assault Mode. This thing has it's level 10, it looks like. Colossal Fighter is also level 10. So those seem legit. That's level 8 for Doomkaiser, level 11 for Hyper Psychic Blaster. So yeah, it seems like always 2 above the level there. So this deals a ton of damage. However, it's like you're also taking that damage, so you need to be able to actually afford it. And you're also losing the Assault Mode monster, not getting back your Synchro. So this is kind of the finisher, I'd say, for the deck, maybe. But is that worth it? Is it worth having that finisher when there are better finishers in the format? Probably not. But it sort of continues a trend that this format has, where a lot of the decks in it, the new archetypes, actually inflict burn damage, which is kind of interesting. But I guess they wanted to go that route. It explains Dark Strike Fighter as well, which we'll get into in a bit. Although I've already talked about it a bit already, but that card's just very dominant. Generic level 7 synchro that burns, so a lot of the burn cards in other decks are not really worth it, but there are some interesting archetypes that came about it. The reactor cards, I'm not even sure if you call this an archetype or just a series of monsters, just like the assault mode things. But this is another thing that came out that was played in the anime. It's based around basically punishing your opponent whenever they do a certain type of action. So summon reactor SK, level 5 dark machine. So the first time a monster is summoned to your opponent's side of the field, each turn inflict 800 damage to your opponent, and then during the battle phase of the turn this effect is activated, you can negate the attack of one monster your opponent controls. It also has an effect to bring out the big boss monster of the deck by sending itself, along with the two other reactors that I'm going to talk about here, from the field of the graveyard to spell summon the Flying Fortress Skyfire, which is the big boss monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So I would say this is a pretty good effect overall. I'm not going to get to the last part of it just yet, but inflicts damage whenever your opponent summons, which is something that your opponent wants to be doing pretty much every turn, and also stops an attack that turn. So I think this thing is probably the best of the reactor monsters, although it does require a tribute for a not really big amount of attack, only 2,000 attack here. And it's pretty easy to see how other decks like Blackwings might use it live if they've got enough extension to go through it. Next up, we got Trap Reactor Wi-Fi. This is a dark machine, 800 attack, 1800 defense. This is once per turn. Your opponent or when your opponent activates a trap card, you can destroy the trap card and inflict 800 damage to your opponent. So this thing basically punishes your opponent from activating traps. However, as a note, it does not negate the trap card. It just deals 800 damage to them. So yeah, it's not the best. Same with Summon Reactor SK. It doesn't negate the summon. It just deals 800 damage to them. So that's kind of annoying to play through, but your opponent probably can play through it. Spell Reactor RE does the same thing for spells. When they activate a spell card, you can destroy the spell card and inflict 800 damage to your opponent. There are certain spells and traps where these destruction effects will be relevant, like continuous traps, continuous spells. But your opponent can probably play around that because you're probably just going to use this effect on the first trap or spell that activates. So your opponent knowing that can just do something else and then, bait out that and then activate their continuous spell or trap that they want to. Or if they're a deck that's like revolves around that, like you could potentially outplay them, like out mind game them. But a lot of the times you're not really going to get another chance because they're just able to destroy these so quick. So yeah, it's kind of rough. I will say Flying Fortress Skyfire, pretty decent boss monster if you can bring it out. It is a machine that can only be special summoned with the effect of Summon Reactor SK, can't be normal summoner set. 3k attack, 20 defense. This is once per turn, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard to destroy one card your opponent controls. And then once during each of your opponent's turns, you can activate one of the following effects. When your opponent normal summons or special summons a monster, destroy it and inflict 800 damage to your opponent. And then when your opponent sets a card, destroy it and inflict 800 damage to your opponent. So this thing is kind of like the better version of all the other reactors. For one, you can just destroy things once per turn on your turn, which is pretty good. And for two, you can stop what your opponent's doing. You can really have a lot of agency to interrupt either their summon plays or you can just snipe their back row. So this thing is pretty good, I'd say. But again, that's if you can bring it out, which is a bit of a tough ask. Now, there are sort of ways to, enable you to bring these things out a little bit better. Fake Explosions, the main way to do that. It's normal trap that says activate only when an opponent's monster declares an attack. Monsters cannot be destroyed by battle, and then after damage calculation, special summon one Summon Reactor SK from your hand or graveyard. The idea here is that you just have a Wi-Fi or a RE on a field, and your opponent attacked into it, you activate Fake Explosion, bring out the Summon Reactor SK, then the next turn you summon out whichever other one of these you need, and then you go into your Flying Fortress Skyfire. So, that can work, but it is kind of a tough combo to pull off, because you kind of need to have the perfect storm of cards here to actually do anything with it. And I will say, while Flying Fortress Skyfire is a decent enough boss, it is susceptible to removal. So, if your opponent is able to remove this with an effect, you've basically gone through, let's see, like 5 cards there, to do that. And yeah, it's just kind of rough to actually lose it that way because you've lost a lot of card advantage. But if you can pull it off and make it work, it is pretty good. Now, the next archetype here is kind of like an archetype at this point, in quotes, because these monsters don't really form an archetype yet. But they are the archetype of the main villains of the series Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds in the first season, which is the Earthbound Immortals. So starting with the Silapiscu, this is the one that burns. This is a 2500 attack, 2500 defense point monster. And they all start with the same sort of condition where there can only be one Earthbound Immortal monster on the field. And then if there's no field spell on the field, destroy this card. So you do need a field spell to pair with this. And then your opponent's monsters cannot target this card for attacks. This card can attack directly. And that is, again, the same with all the Earthbound Immortals. Where they differ is in the stuff that comes after that. So if this face-up card leaves the field except by its own effect, destroy as many face-up monsters your opponent controls as possible, and if you do, inflict 800 damage to your opponent for each monster destroyed. Now, this thing eventually could be used in FTKs, which, just a convoluted way to set it up. Not really that good of a deck, but it is something that you can do with it. Here, though, it's a bit convoluted. You need to have a field spell, which can be a tough ask sometimes. Especially, there just aren't really that many good field spells that you want to pair with a deck like this. Maybe Black Garden, but even that's kind of pushing it. And yeah, also, ideally, this thing is not going to be destroyed. I guess I'll say, if you go into Dark Strike Fighter play, where you tribute this thing after attacking in with it, and then you pop your opponent's board, and then you deal damage on top of that, and that's very good. But I will say, generally that's not really going to come up all too often, because this thing has a lot of levels. So if you tribute that, you're already dealing, 2,000 damage on top of that, and also from the attack, that's 2,500 damage. And then for treating the Dark Strike Fighter itself, that's 1,400. So that's a lot of damage on board already. You don't necessarily need the extra burn damage from this card's effect. You're probably better off, playing with Kapak Apu here. Apologies for butchering that pronunciation, most likely. But it's probably a bit better than Asilipisu. This card starts with the same things that Asilipisu did. And its unique effect is that if this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. So this also has a burn effect. But I'd say it's a little bit better. It'll probably happen more often than Asilipisus will. But again, it sort of falls into the category of do you really need this? This thing can just attack directly. So if you want to deal damage, you can just do that instead. You're probably going to deal more damage than if you just attacked this into a monster, unless that monster's in attack mode. So yeah, I don't think this thing is that good, personally. But it is something you can play. Again, the field spell is kind of a limiter on this factor. And if your opponent pops the field spell, then you're out of luck. But if you can pull off something with it, then it can be pretty decent. Also as a note, these things, they are level 10. So you do have to tribute 2 monsters for them if you want to bring them out naturally. And there aren't really any ways to spell summon these things except for Reborn or things like that. So it's kind of awkward. Also, if these things ever do get good, the fact that there can only be one Earthbound Immortal monster on the field would make it kind of awkward with a mirror match. But luckily, I don't think we really have to worry about that because these things are not really that good. Next up, we got another anime villain archetype with the Skull Flame cards. And these are kind of weird. They released the video game promos, and they're a bit awkward in my opinion. Let's start with Skull Flame. It's a level 8 fire zombie, 2,600 attack, 2,000 defense. Says once per turn, you can spell summon 1 Burning Skull Head from your hand. We'll get to Burning Skull Head in a second. And you cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect. You can add 1 Burning Skull Head from your graveyard to your hand instead of conducting a normal draw in your draw phase. So the idea of this is that you can sort of just get a loop going where you spell summon a Burning Skull Head. Either your opponent attacks over it or you use it for something else, and then you can just get it back the next turn, bring it out again, and do that. And you might be wondering, well, why would I want to do that? The reason for that is that when Burning Skull Head is spell summoned from your hand, you inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. So the idea is that you're burning your opponent for 1,000 damage each turn, but your opponent kind of has to play into that unless you have something else like maybe Mass Driver on your field or Cannon Soldier on your field to then tribute this thing off and deal a little bit more burn damage on top of that. But frankly, this thing... it's not really that good. It does have another effect as well, where you can remove from play this face-up card to return 1 removed from play, that's banished in old terms, 1 removed from play Skull Flame to its owner's graveyard. So, you can basically use it to recycle the Skull Flame if that is getting banished somehow. And the somehow that will banish it is most likely going to be Supersonic Skull Flame, which is the boss monster of this archetype. Really, it's like a series of cards, I'd say. But it is sort of cohesive as a strategy. It is a zombie, 2,600 attack, 2,000 defense, just like the original. And it cannot be normal summoned or set. This card can only be special summoned by removing from play 1 Skull Flame from your graveyard. And once per turn, you can inflict 400 damage to your opponent for each Burning Skull Head in your graveyard. And then when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Skull Flame from your graveyard. So the idea is, if you bring out a Supersonic Skull Flame and you banish Skull Flame to do that, and you want to get the effect off to actually bring this thing back once this thing is destroyed or sent from the field to the graveyard, then you want to use Burning Skull Head to reset the Skull Flame in your graveyard to actually do this. However, there's a lot of sort of conflicting things that this deck wants to be doing. Like if you banish the Burning Skullhead, you don't have it in your graveyard to either get back to Skullflame or to deal burn damage with Supersonic Skullflame. So it's kind of awkward all around. Now I will say Skullflame very accessible off like things like Pyramid Turtle, so you can do that as well. But it's just kind of like an awkward series of cards all around. I think zombies probably would just want to play other things instead of this, and these sort of fall into the trap of again being a bit too slow. So yeah, I don't really think this thing is that good, but it is something you can play if you want to. Next up, let's get to a series of another 3 monsters that sort of pair well together, except I think this one actually is a little bit better than the other one. Let's start with Beast Striker, the level 4 Earth Beast, 1850 attack, 400 defense. Says one per turn, you can discard 1 card, special summon 1 Moja from your deck. Now, what's Moja? Well, Moja is a level 1 Earth Beast, 100 attack, 100 defense. Says when this card is destroyed by battle instead of the graveyard, you can add 1 level 4 Beast type monster from your graveyard to your hand. All told, not that impressive so far. Yes, you can add back Rescue Cap, so that's very nice. But frankly, this thing, if it was on its own, would be kind of underwhelming. King of the Beast is where this thing gets kind of interesting. There's a 2500 attack, 800 defense point monster. It said you contribute 1 face-up Moja. You control to special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. It'll only be 1 face-up King of the Beast on the field. So the idea of this is you use Moja to just bring out King of the Beast, and it's a very, very recurable boss monster. So if they clear King of the Beast, you just bring out another Moja, tribute that Moja, bring out King of the Beast, and you just keep that cycle going, So it's a kind of interesting strategy. I don't think it's really that good in this format. Again, I think it's maybe not too slow, but like it doesn't really do enough on its own. It's a recurable boss monster, but other decks are bringing out things that will kill you that turn. But it's kind of fun to play around with. So I could definitely see people like trying to build this deck and make it work. And I think it has seen like some moderate jank success in Edison, just as like a fun jank deck you can play there. So maybe you can make something work here with it. I don't know. Next up, we've got a series of monsters that is, I don't even know what to do with this, honestly, at this point in the game. We've got Infernities. Now, Infernities is another anime villain archetype here. It was actually played by the same villain who played Kapak Apu. And it's got a very interesting gimmick. The Infernity monsters are things that thrive off you having no cards in hand. And if you do that, they have added benefits. So Archfiend is the best of them right now. It's level 4 Dark Fiend, 1800 attack, 1200 defense. Says when you draw this card, if you have no other cards in your hand, you can reveal this card, special summon this card from your hand. And then when this card is special summoned, you can add 1 Infernity card from your deck to your hand. And you must have no cards in your hand to activate and to resolve this effect. So basically the idea is you draw Infernity Archfiend off the top, or you just draw into a Reborn, something Reborn in this back. You've got no cards in hand. And then you search out another Infernity that you can then summon out. And the only other Infernities you can do that with right now are Infernity Guardian and Infernity Dwarf. Infernity Guardian is probably the only thing this deck could potentially even do right now. It's a level 4 Fiend, 1200 attack, 700 defense. It says while you have no card in your hand, this face-up card cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. So that's really annoying to deal with for a lot of decks. A lot of decks can either destroy by battle or by card effect, but not being able to do either can make this thing sort of just stall out your opponent, I guess. So there could be a potential deck where you just like decide, okay, I'm going to set up Guardian on field in defense, and my opponent will not be able to deal with that, and that's going to be it. However, for a variety of reasons, that's not really that good. For instance, Blackwings, I talked about earlier, they can easily kind of pierce through the defense of a monster like that. So if you just rely on this thing alone, you're just losing the Blackwing matchup 9 times out of 10. 2, while it can stand up against some other decks, there are ways to deal with it. Things like Compulsory Evacuation Device, Phoenix Wing Blast, things like that can deal with it. And also, if your opponent just sets up a Dark Strike Fighter and just tributes their monsters off, they don't even have to attack into you. They just will win eventually, right? So this thing, really not good in this format. Kind of the only thing the deck can do, because Infernity Dwarf is absolutely terrible. It's level 2 Warrior, 800 attack, 500 defense. While you have no card in your hand, if a monster you control attacks against a monster and inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent, just really bad. Low stats. An effect that's very, very mediocre. Just not really that good. So it's kind of just like Guardian Turbo or bust, but again, as I mentioned, that is not really a winning strategy in this format. Although Infernity will get a lot better in later formats, so we'll be keeping an eye on the progression of this deck. Next up, we've got the last archetype that I want to talk about here, which is Koaki Meru, which is a very interesting archetype. It's kind of a hodgepodge of different things. I'd say it's less an archetype, more of a series of cards that can slot into other decks, but it's kind of interesting to sort of view on its own merits. So it's based around the spell card Iron Core of Koaki Meru here. which is a normal spell that says during your draw phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand instead of drawing, and or send one Kokimeru monster from your hand to your graveyard to add this card to your hand. You might wonder, what's the point of this? It's just a card that adds itself to your hand. What's the big deal, right? Well, the reason for this is that all the Kokimeru monsters are pretty strong monsters that are balanced by the fact that in the end phase, they're destroyed unless you reveal Kokimeru or some other card. So let's start with Drago. Drago is the one that most people probably know because it's played in Dragon Turbo decks and Edison. But this thing is pretty good on its own. It sort of falls into the class of monsters in the Kokimeru archetype, I'd say, that sort of are meant to stop light and dark monsters, which a lot of decks do, sort of utilize light and dark monsters, so that can be pretty decent. The 1900 attack, 1600 defensive point monster that says during each of your end phase, destroy this card unless you send one Iron Core Kokimeru from your hand to the graveyard or reveal one Dragon type monster in your hand. Neither player can spell summon light or dark monsters. So the idea is, if you want this thing to stick around and you don't have a dragon, you got to pitch the Iron Core, then you can get back in your next draw phase and keep this thing around again. However, that runs into a problem when you have multiple Kokimeru monsters that want to be doing that, and so it's kind of awkward because you're not drawing anything more, and you've only got one Iron Core of Kokimeru, most likely. So it can be kind of awkward. Now, if you have 3 of this, then you potentially support multiple Kokimeru monsters on your field, and you just add it back during your draw phase every turn. So that could potentially be not as bad, but if you only got one, it's kind of rough. Doom, though, is a level 3 Fiend, 1700 attack, 800 defense, and just like Drago, you destroy it during each of your end phases, unless you send one Iron Core of Kokimeru from your hand to the graveyard, or reveal one Fiend-type monster in your hand, and you get to negate the light and dark effects of monsters that activate during the main phase. So this card is not really as good as Drago. It did see some play in certain combo decks, like there's a Gauss FTK deck that uses this thing, but frankly, this thing is not really that good in this format. And so, it's not really worth discussing. It's just kind of interesting how they sort of settled on shutting down light and dark stuff. And Power Hand is another thing that sort of plays into that aspect of them. This is probably one of the better Kokimeru monsters that you just play on your own. It's a 2100 attack point level 4 monster, so that's pretty good. And then during each of your end phases, destroy this card unless you send one Iron Core of Kokimeru from your hand to the graveyard or reveal one normal trap in your hand. If this card battles a light or dark monster, any of that monster's effects that activate or apply on field or negate during that battle phase, while this card remains on the field. So this again negates a light or dark monster effect, but this is on a much bigger body than Doom, for instance. Even though 1700 is still pretty decent. And so I think this thing is a bit better than Doom. Also, I will say, interestingly enough, I like the way that they balance this compared to some of the others, where it does have more attack, and so the reveal effect of it has a bit more of a downside, where you reveal a normal trap, and that sort of prevents the surprise of that normal trap from actually being able to affect your opponent, because they'll know about it, so they can play around it a bit more. Now, you can do certain mind games with that, but I do like that this is a bit more of a drawback than something like Doom or Drago, I will say. But it also makes it a bit more flexible in the deck, because this deck does play some normal traps, potentially, so it means that you don't necessarily have to be pitching an Iron Core to keep this thing around. Technically, that's true for the others as well, but Kokimeru, as just a deck, plays a ton of different types of monsters. So if you want to play pure Kokimeru, which I don't necessarily recommend, it's kind of tough to actually satisfy that type constraint. But it's kind of interesting to see how they try and just balance these cards around different things. There are some other Kokimeru monsters that want to just have a big attack, just like Power Hand. War Arms is the big one. This is a level 4 Earth Warrior, 14 attack, 1200 defense. So during each of your end phases, you can destroy this card unless you send one Iron Core of Kokimeru from your hand to the graveyard or reveal one Warrior type monster in your hand. Once per turn, you can target one level 3 or lower Warrior monster in your graveyard, equip that target to this card, and then this card gains attack equal to half the attack, or combined attack, that is, of the monsters equipped to it by this effect, and if it would be destroyed by battle, destroy all monsters equipped to it by this effect instead. So you can potentially buff this thing up to a pretty high amount, depending on what warriors you have in your graveyard. But it also kind of leans into a thing about the Kokimeru monster that prevent them from being really that good as a complete archetype together, in that they want to kind of be in their own typal decks, right? Like, you kind of want to just play Kokimeru War Arms in a warrior deck, because it can be pretty decent there if you got a lot of warriors in grave already, and you already have warriors in your hand, most likely, so you're just going to reveal that instead. Drago, he's playing Dragon Turbo and Edison because you generally have dragons around to actually keep it up, and it's got a very good effect, so you might as well just play in that deck. You don't need to do the other Kokimeru stuff here. Guardian, which is the next one that I want to talk about, generally she plays in like Rock Stun decks, because this thing is very, very good at shutting down what your opponent's doing. Level 4 Earth Rock, 19 attack, 12 defense. Said during each of your end phases, destroy this card unless you send one Iron Core of Koki Meru from your hand to the graveyard, or reveal one rock monster in your hand. And then when a monster effect is activated, as a quick effect, you can tribute this card to get the activation if you destroy that monster. So this thing can just shut down your opponent's monster effects. It does cost itself to do that, but arguably that's not a bad cost, because this thing could potentially just destroy itself during your end phase anyways. So it's kind of like a better Doomcal in a lot of ways, especially if you're playing other rock monsters as well. Rock isn't really a cohesive strategy at this point, but there are certain things you can do with this. Like if you're playing like an Evil Hero Dark Gaia deck, right, you can use this thing and probably have some rocks around to pair with it. Next up, we got Koki Meru Ice, the level 4 Water Aqua, 19 attack, 12 defense. So same stats as the Guardian here. And during each of your end phase, destroy this card unless you send one Iron Core of Koki Meru from your hand to the graveyard, or reveal one continuous spell card in your hand. You can send one card from your hand to the graveyard to destroy one special summon monster on the field. So again, this is punishing a special summon. You're trying to negate that with Drago, but if they do manage to slip one through the cracks, you got Ice to pop it. And that can actually be pretty good. I like this effect a lot. Unfortunately, not many decks play continuous spells in them, so it doesn't really have a home. But I think if it did have a home, then this thing would actually be pretty decent. Nextly, we've got the boss monster of Koki Merus. And again, pure Koki Merus is pretty bad. So, like, do you even want to be playing this? But it is something you can play if you want to. We've got Koki Meru Valifar. There's a level 8 Fiend, 3000 attack, 21 defense. And instead of having a choice of either sending the Iron Core to the graveyard or revealing something, this one just stays on field by sending an Iron Core of Koki Meru from your hand to the graveyard. No other option for you. You can tribute to summon this card, or this monster, by tributing one Koki Meru monster. This card cannot be destroyed by the effects of trap cards, and then during battle between this attacking card and defensive monster, whose defense is lower than the attack of this card, inflict the difference, add battle damage to your opponent. So overall, pretty underwhelming effect, although it can't be destroyed by the effects of trap cards, which could be nice. But piercing damage is just not enough on this guy. This guy's not really that good, and the very, very restrictive effect to only send the Iron Core of Koki Meru to keep it around, it's not really that good. But Koki Merus also did receive some spell trap support, so let's just go through that quickly now. Iron Core immediate disposal is a normal spell that says select and send one Iron Core of Koki Meru from your deck to your graveyard. So this sets up the core engraved, so that way you can add it to your hand during your draw phase on your next turn. Urgent Synthesis is a normal spell that says return one Iron Core of Koki Meru from your graveyard to the deck, and it's supposed to summon one level 4 lower Koki Meru monster from your hand or your graveyard. So this thing, I think it's kind of counterintuitive. I think it's kind of self-defeating, because you kind of want that Iron Core in rotation, so that way you can add it to your hand. But I guess if you have multiple, you can just activate this, send one back, and then just like, bring back an Iron Core of Koki Meru monster to have around, I guess. I don't know. This thing, not really that good, in my opinion. Although if you want to set up a tribute for Valifar, you can do that as well, I guess. But I don't know. I don't think this deck is about extending. I think it's about locking down your opponent. And this thing can bring back a lockdown monster, but it kind of costs too much to do that. Next up, we got Automatic Later, a normal trap that says when your opponent normal summoned or special summons a monster with 1000 or more attack, reveal one Iron Core of Koki Meru in your hand, activate this card, and then destroy that special summoned or just normal summoned monster. This can be pretty good, shutting off a summon, just like something like Drago or Ice could do, I guess, after a turn. But it's just kind of like awkward. I don't know. Especially because, like, on your opponent's turn, you likely won't have an Iron Core of Koki Meru in your hand because you're setting to the grave to fulfill the condition of your monsters. So this will really only be in play once you have it in your hand on your turn. So I don't really think it's that good. But it's an interesting card to have around, I guess. Next up, we got Reckoned Power, the normal trap that says reveal one Iron Core of Koki Meru in your hand, destroy all face down spell and trap cards your opponent controls. So this is kind of like a Delta Crow anti-reverse. And it's a little bit better because you can activate on your turn and pop your opponent's entire back row before you go for a push. But I still don't think it's really that good overall, because I think just Koki Meru just is not good as an archetype on its own. I think if you're playing it as a pure archetype, this is probably a thing that you put in the deck, but I would not recommend actually playing a pure archetype. I would just recommend splashing it in some other decks. But that's going to do it for the new archetypes released in this format. Let's dive into some of the archetypes that are getting supported with some new waves of support in the new packs. Now, interestingly enough, I don't actually think there were many good support cards that came out for previous archetypes. There are some, and there are some that greatly change the way their strategies are played, so that is important to note. But compared to some other format guides where the support really just revitalized the deck or changed it completely, I don't think that really happens here, which is kind of weird, because I think that overall, this era of the card packs, at least, was very well designed. I think they definitely had some problematic cards, right? Like not everyone looks back on the 5Ds era that fondly because a lot of it is just kind of degenerate. But I do think that overall the pack designs were kind of hitting harder than a lot of the GX pack designs were. So it's kind of surprising that they didn't really have many decent support cards here. But I do want to talk about them because I think they are important, and some of them actually are pretty good. Firstly, we got Gladiator Beast Samnite here, the level 3 Beast Earth. Gladiator Beast monster, 1600 attack, 1200 defense. When this card that was special summoned by the effect of a Glad Beast monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can add one Glad Beast card from your deck to your hand. And then at the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, you can shuffle it in the deck, special summon one Gladiator Beast monster from your deck, except for Gladiator Beast Samnite. So, interestingly enough, this doesn't have an effect that activates upon being summoned. It has an effect that activates when you destroy an opponent's monster the following turn. With 1600 attack, that effect will likely not come up all too often. It can come up, but it's kind of not really that good. So you may be wondering why I'm talking about this first, especially because you'd expect me to start at the sort of support that's the best for an archetype. Well, I do actually think that Gladiator Beast Samnite is probably the best archetypal support for an older archetype in these packs. And that may sound surprising, but the reason why it is that way is because it's a level 3 beast monster. So you can bring this out off of Rescue Cat. So what you can do is you can just summon on Rescue Cat, go into Samnite and Test Tiger, and then you get instant Glad Beast summon, pop, do something with it, whatever you want to do, right? So I actually think this thing is very good for Glad Beast. I think it changed the way the deck plays. You can potentially get a lot more plays off than you could before, even though Samnite itself is not really the best monster in the world in that archetype. Next up, we got Indomitable Gladiator Beast, which is clearly meant to be used with Samnite. It's got Samnite on the card art, after all. It quickly spells a target one face of Glad Beast monster you control. It gains 500 attack until the end phase, and then while this card is in your graveyard, you can return 2 Gladiator Beast cards from your graveyard to the deck to return this card to your hand. So this means that you can loop this multiple times in one turn, activate this thing, get it engraved, and then send cards back to your deck, add to your hand again. It's not necessarily the way I'd recommend playing it, because generally you want to be using this like in damage depth, since it, adjusts the attack of a monster, and that's a lot harder to respond to than if you just use it initially. But it's something you can do. It just telegraphs your plays from that point onward, and it pairs with Samnite quite well, because then you can search out another Gladiator Beast card from your deck to your hand that maybe includes some of the ones you shuffled back into the deck. So there's a lot of synergies here that are kind of neat. However, I don't really think it's that good, especially because I don't think you should be relying on Samnite's effect itself. You should just be using it as a Test Tiger bridge into other things. But interesting card for sure. Next up, we got Trojan Gladiator Beast, with a very interesting trap card. It says special summon one Gladiator Beast monster from your hand to your opponent's side of the field, and then draw one card. So this thing can be decent, and the reason why it can be decent is if you special summon that Glad Beast in defense mode, or it's a weak Glad Beast that you summon in attack mode, then you've got a free monster to attack into for your other Glad Beast, get that effect off, go into something else, right? So it can be decent, right? Especially because you draw a card after it, right? So you're kind of replacing the card that you lose from hand. However, it's a bit convoluted, and the main thing that stops Gladiator Beast is not necessarily your opponent not having monster to attack into, although that definitely can happen. It's mainly the opponent's back row and just other ways to stop battle. So I don't really think this thing is that good. It's fine in certain niche scenarios, but would it be something that I'd recommend playing in Glad Beast as a whole? No, probably not. Now, Glad Beast also got some hate in this format, which I do want to talk about here. Since I put it at the start of the list, I figure I should talk about the things that other decks have to counteract it. GB100, the level 4 Earth Warrior, 1200 attack, 2000 defense. Says cards on the field cannot be returned to the deck. So this means that your Glad Beast cannot use their effect to tag out another Glad Beast. So this thing is kind of nasty against Glad Beasts. You said it. They attack into it, expecting for an easy tag out, and you don't give them that. So this thing can just shut down that deck entirely, although it is very specific. It's kind of just basically just for Glad Beasts. It does stop Phoenix Wind Blast as well, but not many decks are playing that anymore. And also, do you need a card specifically tailored to beat that card? Not really. So I don't think this thing is that good, except as just a very, very hateful anti-Glad Beast deck. But if you want that, here it is. Mirror of Oaths is a little bit better in my opinion. It's not perfect. It's not completely shutting down your opponent like GB Hunter is. I think this thing is not bad. The normal chart that says when your opponent special summons a monster or monsters from their main deck, destroy that monster or monsters, and if you do, draw one card. Now, this will enable the Glad Beast player to get off an effect if they bring out Bestiary or Murmilla or something like that. But we'll still destroy that Glad Beast, and then we'll also draw you a card on top of that. So I think this thing is generally, pretty good against Glad Beast, especially because it's something that you'll probably have in your side deck anyways to deal with Rescue Cat decks, because this does hit Rescue Cat as well, and Summoner Monk, and just a lot of other decks incidentally. So I think this thing is actually pretty good as a side deck card, probably better than GB Hunter, even though it's not as perfect at stopping Glad Beast specifically. But moving on from Glad Beast, there were actually a lot of, old anime adjacent archetypes that actually got a buff in the new sets. Ojamas, surprisingly, got a buff. Ojama Blue and Ojama Red are two Ojama effect monsters with the same stat line as the original normal monsters. They're light beast, 0 attack, 1000 defense. It says when this card is destroyed by balance to the graveyard, you can add 2 Ojama cards from your deck to hand. And for red, when this card normal summon, you can spell summon up to 4 Ojama monsters from your hand in attack position. So this is kind of interesting. Would you want these to be searching out the Ojamas and bringing them on attack? Maybe not, but they did receive a way to at least, sort of press your advantage with them in the form of Ojama Country. There's a field spell that says once per turn, you can send 1 Ojama card from your hand to the graveyard, spell summon 1 Ojama monster from your graveyard. While you control an Ojama monster, switch the original attack and defense of all monsters on the field. So this means your opponent is playing a lot of high attack, low defense monsters. Then your Ojamas actually can walk over them if you've got Ojama Red. Or if you go into like an Ojama King or Ojama Knight, they have a lot of attack there because 3000 defense becomes 3000 attack. And Ojama Knight's 2500 defense becomes 2500 attack. So this can be pretty good. And the fact that you can just recur those monsters as well is pretty nice too. I think you can instant fusion into Ojama Knight, get that engraved, and it was properly fusion summoned, so you can then bring it back with Ojama Country, which is pretty nice as well. So there are a lot of different combos you can do. Also, Rescue Cat can go into Ojama monsters, which is kind of wild as well. So very interesting stuff you can do with Ojama Country and new Ojamas. I don't think it's really good enough to make this thing like competitively viable, but it's kind of fun. Speaking of anime archetypes from GX, we got Roids getting a new support card in the form of Armoroid, the level 8 Earth Machine, 2500 attack, 2000 defense. Says if this card is tribute summoned by tributing at least 1 Roid monster, banish all spawn trap cards on the field. So you bring this thing out, banish all the back row, and then you can get in with a big guy. Unfortunately, this thing is a level 8, so it's kind of hard to use. But if it ever does come up, you can potentially use it. Roids are not really that well defined of an archetype right now, so I don't think this thing does enough to actually propel it into actual playability, but it's something that you can play if you want to. Next up, we've got Wing Karibo level 9. This is a level 9 Wing Karibo monster. Fairy, question mark attack, question mark defense. It says activate only as chain link 3 or higher. As a quick effect, you can spell summon this card from your hand. Spell cards that have been activated are banished instead of being sent to the graveyard. And then the attack and defense of this card are equal to the number of spells in your opponent's graveyard times 500. You can only control 1 Wing Karibo level 9 because this thing is just too powerful on its own. If you can tell, that's a little bit of sarcasm there. This thing is not really that good. Very situational. Your opponent has a lot of spells engraved, which they might not have. Different decks play different amount of spells. And also your opponent might not have many when you actually want to bring this thing out. And after that, any spell they activate is banished instead of being set to grave. So, I don't know. It's not really that good in my opinion, but it's kind of fun to have another Wing Karibo monster and another Karibo monster in general. Now, Karibos also did get another piece of support all the way back from the DM era, which is Multiply. It's a quick play spell that says tribute 1 face-up Karibo. Spell summon as many Karibo tokens, which are Fiend, Dark, level 1 attack, 300 defense 200. So the same stat line as the original Karibo. As possible in defense position, they cannot be treated for a tribute summon. So, basically, you can use this to get a bunch of tokens on field. You can potentially use this for synchro plays. You can potentially use this to wall off against what your opponent has. But it's not really that good. It's there for anime purposes, which I am grateful that this thing exists, but don't expect to see it in many decks. Speaking of cards, let's sort of just zero in on one monster. We've also got Limiter Overload, which, paired with a 5D monster. There's a normal trap that says if this card is sent to the graveyard, spell summon 1 Speed Warrior from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Is that good? No. Speed Warrior is pretty bad. But is it an anime card? Sure. And so here it is. I like that they port these in, even though they're bad. I know some people complain about this sort of pack filler, but I think if it's tying into the anime in that way, it's kind of fun to have. Crimson Fire is a counter trap that says when your opponent activates a spell trap card that would inflict damage to you while you control a Red Dragon Archfiend, your opponent takes twice the effect damage you would have taken instead. So this is kind of a neat counter trap. Is this really going to come up that often? Maybe in this format, actually, with Dark Strike Fighter around. But you have to control Red Dragon Archfiend, and so if your opponent's going for Dark Strike Fighter play, they've probably gotten in for a ton of attack and cleared your field already. So is this likely to come up? Probably not. But is it funny? Yeah, it's funny, and I think that's worth it. And again, it's an anime tie-in card. What more can you ask for it, right? Next up, we've got another card that's meant to specific monster from the DM era. Maku, the Magical Mist, normal spell, not normal trap. This is target 1 summon skull or 1 thunder monster in your monster zone. Destroy all monster your opponent controls with defense less than or equal to the attack of that monster. You cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this card. So there aren't too many thunder monsters. Like Battery Man have some, so you can potentially do stuff with that. But this thing is not really that good. It's mainly here for anime purposes. Again, like the anime sells. The anime is, features a lot of cards that are hyper specific and would never see play outside of that, but it's fun to have them now. Next up, we have BS Big Core MK2, a level 6 fire machine monster in that series of like Big Core and BS Tetran and all those cards there. And I like this sort of series. They're not really ever that good, but it is kind of fun to see more of them. It's a machine with 2400 attack, 1100 defense. So if you control no monster, you can normal summon this card without tributing. When this card is special summon, place 3 counters on it. This card cannot be destroyed by battle. If this card attacks or is attacked, remove 1 counter from this card at the end of the damage step, and if you cannot destroy it. So this thing, it's really not good. You just need to special summon it out to get 3 counters on it, but you can at least normal summon without tributing, but it's only good for 1 attack or defend. And so for that reason, not really the best in my opinion. But it is like a neat card for that series of cards. So I'm glad they made it. I'm glad they're still making cards in that series, even that series is not that good. It's a bunch of video game references at the end of the day, and that's pretty fun. Next up, we've got a series of cards that actually are pretty decent in my opinion. I think that, the changes made to this sort of, I don't know if it's an archetype or a series of cards, but to this sort of strategy is very interesting, and I think it's pretty cool. So this is just cards that deal with spell counters. When Magician Force came out in the DM era, spell counters were a thing that they were trying to push. They had like Armor X and Break of the Magical Warrior and Apprentice Magician and a bunch of things to sort of manipulate spell counters. But unfortunately, it was not really that good, especially since Magical Scientist came out in this set, and that kind of dominated everything. But now they're trying to sort of rework that sort of a little bit and try and introduce more monsters into that series that make it a little bit better. Defender of the Magical Knight is the most clear, sort of warping of an original version of that effect, because, this is sort of the counterpart to Break of the Magical Warrior. Spell counter, 1600 attack, 2000 defense. If this card normal summon, place 1 spell counter on it, max 1. Once per turn, if a spell counter monsters on the field would be destroyed, you remove 1 spell counter from your field for each of those monsters instead. Now, as a note, unlike Breaker, this can remove spell counters from anywhere on field, so that's kind of nice. But also, it's more of a defensive spell counter thing than an offensive one, right? And you can still play Breaker here. Don't get me wrong. It's just Defender is sort of the counterpart to it. Not as good as Breaker, in my opinion, but it can come up to protect your spellcasters, which the cards that would take advantage of this thing are spell counters, or spellcasters, that is. And also, it's nice to see how these spell counter stuff pair with things like Archetype Magician, which also utilize spell counters quite well. Magical Citadel of Endymion, though, is kind of the thing that holds this sort of series of cards together. It's a very, very good field spell. So each time a spell card is activated, place 1 spell counter on this card. When that spell resolves, if a card with a spell counter or spell counters is destroyed, place spell counters on this card. And once per turn, if you would activate a card effect by removing a spell counter or spell counters from a card you control, you may remove that many spell counters from this card instead. And then if this card would be destroyed, you can remove 1 spell counter from this card instead. So this thing, very, very good. Very, very good in my opinion. Yes, it does have limitations. For instance, the effect where it gets to basically take spell counters off it instead of the monster or card that would want to take spell counters off itself. That can only be activated once per turn. So you can't do a ton of crazy combos. But it's still very good in my opinion. And the fact that it protects itself, the fact that it can sort of maintain your spell counters that you've invested into when one of your things is destroyed, I think it's very, very good. So this thing is kind of the heart and soul of the deck, the best card in the deck in my opinion, and it just keeps getting spell counters whenever spells are activated, which is pretty good as well. Arcane Barrier is a continuous spell. So each time you face a spellcaster monster or monsters on the field is destroyed, place 1 spell counter on this card, max 4. You can send this card and 1 face-up spellcaster monster you control to the graveyard. Draw 1 card for each spellcaster or spell counter that was on this card. So this allows you to draw pretty deep in your deck, which actually is pretty nice, although it probably will take some time to actually set up because you need to get your spellcaster monsters destroyed, which doesn't happen all that often. You can pop your own spellcasters with Arcanite, I guess. Or actually can. That might only be opponent sponsors. But anyway, trying to live out combos like that is kind of tough because it's kind of awkward. You're losing a lot of cards to gain a lot of cards, and that can work out sometimes, but in this sort of deck, I don't really think it does as much as you'd like. Next up, we got Disenchanter, which is not the best spellcaster in this series of cards, but is something you can play. Level 5 spellcaster effect, 2000 attack, 2300 defense, and its effect is once per turn, you can target 1 face-up spell on the field, remove 1 spell counter from anywhere on the field, and if you do, return that target to the hand. If it's really only good in the mirror, if you return a Magical Citadel of Endymion that your opponent controls to the hand, that's extremely good. But I don't really think this thing will see much play outside of that. Not many decks play continuous spells or field spells or things like that. Next up, we've got Endymion, the Master Magician. This is a level 7 dark Spellcaster, 27 attack, 79 defense, says that you can spell summon this card from your hand or graveyard by removing 6 spell counters from a magical citadel of Endymion you control. If spell summoned this way, target 1 spell in your graveyard, add that target to your hand, and then once per turn, you can discard 1 spell, then target 1 card on the field, destroy that target. Now, that is a really, really good boss monster. Your Endymion will likely get a lot of spell counters on it just natively, and being able to bring out a Master Magician to then get back another spell, to then put another spell counter on this immediately is very, very good. Magician of Faith is banned in this format, and this thing is running around, and so that's pretty good. Also, being able to discard a spell and then target a card on the field and destroy that target is very nice as well. It's just very, very good boss monster. It does have its flaws, just like all the boss monsters I've talked about in this video. But I will say, I think this is like potentially good enough to be playable just on its own. Just trying to build into Endymion. It's unsearchable, which makes that sort of deck hard to actually manage to make work. But it's fun, and if you want a jank deck, I think it's a pretty good one to do. And also, I want to talk about Spell Power Grasp. This is another very, very good support card for the series. It's a normal spell that says target 1 face-up card on the field that you can play a spell counter on, place 1 spell counter on that target, then you can add 1 Spell Power Grasp from your deck to your hand. You can only activate 1 Spell Power Grasp per turn. So this is similar to a card known as Gather Your Mind, which is viewed as one of the worst Yu-Gi-Oh cards of all time, but in the context of just putting spell counters on things, that's what Gather Your Mind was for. Here, Spell Power Grasp goes one above, where you activate this thing, anything that would put a spell counter on it because the spell card's activated gets that, and also you get to put a spell counter on something of your choice. So this thing is very, very good in my opinion for the deck, and probably wants to be played. It also deck thins to make it easier to find Endymion Master Magician, so I like this thing a lot, and I think the spell counter deck is cool. Will I play it in this format? I don't quite know. I'm not sure how many videos I'm going to make on this format, but I do think it is cool to see this thing running around in this format now. Speaking of field spells, though, we got Morphronic Map, another really, really good field spell for an archetype that desperately needed something. And that archetype is Morphronics. Now, Morphronics still not good, but I think Map is a really, really good card for the deck and gives it a little bit of a sense of identity. This is a field spell that says each time a monster's battle position is changed, place 1 morph counter on this card. All Morphronic monsters gain 3 in attack for each morph counter on this card. When this card is destroyed and sent from field to graveyard, you can still summon 1 Morphronic monster from your graveyard. So, basically, one of the issues with Morphronic but that it could do some things, right? Like it switches attack and defense positions like a lot to get different effects and use those effects to, pull off certain plays. But it really lacked a bit of oomph. It lacked a bit of push power, right? It couldn't close out a game really. And Morphronic Map gives it the ability to do that. If you're playing your game plan over the course of a game, you're going to get a bunch of counters on this thing. And that counters are going to boost up your monsters to pretty disgusting heights, like pretty quickly. And if you pair that with something like Morphronic Borden, a new monster that lets you attack with your Morphronic monsters directly, if when it's in attack position, you can actually get in a lot of damage there. And so I do think that map is pretty good. Also, the fact that when it's destroyed, you can special summon a Morphronic monster for your graveyard. That's also pretty nice. Just reuse those Morphronics. And so I think that the deck is a little bit better now. Is it good? I don't know if I'd go that far, but it is better. And I'm glad there's at least something that you can play around with the deck. The defense position effect of Borden is that other Morphronic monster you control cannot be destroyed by battle, which is pretty good. It can still be destroyed itself. It makes sense because it's just lending that battle protecting the others. But it's got 800 defense, which is pretty decent there. Next up, we got Slingin', level 4 wind machine, 1200 attack, 800 defense, says while in attack position. Once per turn, you contribute 1 Morphronic monster except for Slingin' to destroy 1 card on the field. So that's pretty good. And then while in defense position, if this card be destroyed, you can destroy another Morphronic monster you control instead. So again, another sort of protection E effect similar to Borden, although it protects itself, unlike Borden, which protects everything else. So I like the fact that this can pop anything on field. I think that's pretty good. And if you pair it with other things like, for instance, Junk Box, which I might as well talk about now, actually. Junk Box being a normal spell that says select and special summon 1 level 4 lower Morphronic monster from your graveyard and destroy it during the end phase. If you go Junk Box and then treat whatever you bring back for Slingin' after using the effect, then it's pretty good. Next up, we got Vidion. Vidion sort of pairs with another aspect of Morphronics that will get even more enhanced in this set, which is using equip spells. Now, there were Morphronic equip spells before this point, but they weren't really that good. And honestly, a lot of the Morphronic equip spells are still not really the best. But Vidion gives you a reason to play them. He's level 4 Light Machine, 1000 attack, 1000 defense, and while in attack position, this card gains 800 attack for each equip card equipped to it, and then while in defense position, this card gains 800 defense for each card equipped to it. So, this actually can pair very well with United We Stand, or things like that, which may be why it's still limited on the list. But it can also pair with a lot of the new equip spells, like Double Tool C&D. There's a equip spell that says equip only to a Power Tool Dragon, which we get to in a second, and one level 4 or higher machine type Morphronic monster you control. While equipped, during your turn, it gains 1000 attack. if it attacks, any effects of the attack target that activate or apply on the field are negated during that battle phase. And then during your opponent's turn, your opponent cannot select a monster other than the equipped monster at an attack target, and opponent's monster that battles the equipped monster is destroyed at the end of the damage step. So this sort of has two sort of modes, just like a lot of the more trunk monsters do. So I think that's kind of interesting there. And the 1,000 attack boost is actually pretty good. That's more than a lot of other equipped spells give. So I do think it's a pretty decent Morphtronic equipped card, all things controlled, even if it's not a Morphtronic card in name. Speaking of Morphtronic cards in name, we got Morphtronic Repair Unit, the equipped spell that says, send one Morphtronic monster from your hand to the graveyard and select one Morphtronic monster in your graveyard. It's supposed to summon the selected monster and equip it with this card. The equipped monster cannot change battle position. When this card is removed from field, destroy the equipped monster. So I like and don't like this card. It's kind of like Junk Box in a way, except the monster sticks around for longer, but you can't really switch to attack or defense to then get the other effect. So that's kind of awkward. But to be fair, with Junk Box, you can't really do that either because you only have this thing around for a turn. So it sort of fulfills a similar purpose, although this does require you to pitch a Morphtronic monster as well, so you're losing some advantage on that. But, you know, if you bring back a Videon, you bring back an 1800 attack point guy that you probably won't be switching to defense often anyways, so you can sort of get value there with that. Next up, we got Rusty Engine, the equip spell that says, equip only to a Morphtronic monster if the equipped monster is destroyed, inflict damage to each player equal to its original attack. So there's a bit of burn damage. Does that matter that often? Probably not. The Morphtronics all have pretty low attack. So, you know, since it deals damage based on the original attack, not really going to do much, but it's an equipped spell, so you get to equip it to Videon and buff it up a little bit more. Now, you might be wondering, how do I get these equipped spells to hand to pair with Videon? And there's a very, very easy way to do that in the form of Power Tool Dragon. Level 7 Machine Synchro, 23 attack, 25 defense. It says made with one tuner, one non-tuner monster, level 7. And then once per turn, you can reveal 3 equipped spells from your deck. Your opponent randomly adds one of them to your hand and shuffle the other cards in the deck. And then if this card would be destroyed while equipped with an equipped spell, you can send one of those cards to the graveyard instead. Now, this thing gets used in some pretty nasty combo decks later down the line. I don't think those decks can really be replicated here in this format, but it is still a pretty good card overall for Morphtronics especially. And it can be equipped with double C&D, so that's kind of neat as well. Compared to a lot of other level 7 synchros in the format, it's not really that good, but if you need level 7 synchros in your extra deck, this is a generic one, so it's something that you can make there. But if you want to get those equipped spells back from grave, you can also do Gadget Arms. Gadget Arms is a level 2 machine, water machine actually, which is kind of interesting. Flip monster with 200 attack, 400 defense, select one Morphtronic spell or trap card in your graveyard, add to your hand. Now, this can be things like the Rusty Engine or the Repair Unit, but it can also be other traps as well, like Morphtronic Force Field, counter trap that says negate the activation of a spell or trap that would destroy a face-up Morphtronic monster you control and destroy it. Add one Morphtronic monster, or Morphtronic card that is, from your deck to your hand. So that's a pretty good counter trap. You also have Morphtronic Bind if you want to go for a bit more of a stallier approach. Continuous trap that says, while you control a face-up Morphtronic monster, all level 4 or higher monsters your opponent controls cannot declare an attack or change their battle positions. It lets you attack, but your opponent cannot while you have Morphtronic, so that's kind of neat. You've also got Morphtronic Mix-Up with a normal trap that says, if you control 2 or more face-up Morphtronic monsters, select 2 cards your opponent controls, destroy one of your opponent's choice from those 2. So I don't necessarily like this thing as much as some of the others, because it is your opponent's choice as to which they destroy, so it's kind of awkward. But you're still destroying something, so that's not terrible, right? It's still a 1-for-1 trade, even if it's not a 1-for-1 trade that you can choose, really. But for the last 2 Morphtronic cards, they've got ways to get into Power Tool mainly. Scopin is a level 3 light machine tuner, 800 attack, 1400 defense, and while in attack position, once per turn, you can supposed to summon one level 4 Morphtronic monster from your hand, destroy it during the end phase, so that's level 7 right there. And then while in defense position, while this card is face up in defense, is level 4. So if you've got a level 3 Morphtronic, like let's say you've got Borden, and you need to synchro with it, you can potentially bring out Scopin. Well, you can't bring out Scopin in defense, but like if it's already in field, you can switch to defense and go into a 7, but or you can Junk Box into it and then go into that way. So yeah, not bad there. Remoten is the other level 3 machine tuner here. Earth, 300 attack, 1200 defense. While in attack position once per turn, you can target one Morphtronic monster in your graveyard. Banish that target, and if you do, add one Morphtronic monster with the same level of the target from your deck to your hand. So this sort of is a searcher, which is kind of nice. And then in defense position once per turn, you can send one Morphtronic monster from your hand to the graveyard, and if you do, add one other Morphtronic monster with the same level as that monster from your graveyard to your hand. So this sort of can get back from grave, can get back from deck. So it's kind of an interesting searcher. Also, I do find it funny that they called it Remoten when it very clearly is like an iPod. But they really wanted to dodge the lawsuits there. So that's going to do it for the more strong support. And I think the support's pretty good overall, even if it doesn't make the deck top tier. And it's kind of cool that they get their own synchro monster now and ways to get into it. Another archetype also got that, and that is aliens. Aliens actually are, I think, not terrible. You make like an interesting rogue deck with it, but it's not really that good in this format. But Ammonite is definitely a way that the deck gets a lot better. It's a level 1 light reptile tuner, 500 attack, 200 defense, and then when this card normal summon, you can target one level 4 lower alien monster in your graveyard, spell summon it, but destroy it during the end phase. Doesn't really matter because you're using that to go into the level 5 synchro. Cosmic Fortress Golgar. Now, this is 2600 attack, 800 defense. It's made with alien ammonite and one or more non-tuner alien monsters. Then once per turn, you can select any number of face-up spell or trap cards, return those cards to the owner's hand, and distribute new A counters among monsters on the field equal to the number of cards returned. Once per turn, you can remove 2 A counters from anywhere on the field. Destroy 1 card your opponent controls. Now, A counters, if you don't know, but aliens are things that they put on monsters to basically infect them, to make them weaker in battle with a lot of your aliens that you have, or just pull off effects like Golgar's second effect here. And I think that is a pretty good effect overall. Being able to just pop things on the field is very good for the low cost of removing A counters on the field. And it's from anywhere on field, which also gives you a lot of flexibility in how you structure that. I do also find Golgar interesting because I think it does show how like the advent of synchro monsters made a lot of extra deck levels kind of meaningless. Like I think if this was a fusion monster, this thing would be like level 7 or above because 2600 attack is a lot of attack. And the effect is pretty good too. So I think they would be like, okay, this thing's definitely above level 5. But because they have to make the synchro play work here, they put it at level 5. So it's just kind of interesting to see how they adjusted that there. But Aliens also got a bit more support cards here as well, like Code Ancient Ruins. They continue a spell. This is each time a face-up alien monster is destroyed. Place 1 A counter on this card. Once per turn, you can remove 2 A counters from anywhere on the field. You can summon 1 alien monster from your graveyard. So this allows you to recur alien monsters, potentially make for another synchro play, like with an Ammonite or something. So that's not bad. It's also a face-up spell trap to return with Golgar. So definitely pretty decent there. Next we get Alien Overlord, which is the new main deck boss monster. 200 attack, 1600 defense, so you remove 2 A counters from anywhere on the field. You're supposed to summon this card from your hand. Then once per turn, you can place 1 A counter on each face-up monster opponent controls. So that's very, very good for things like Golgar, which can then remove more of them and pop things, right? And this actually does have the battle effect, which you do need an alien on your field with that effect that if a monster with an A counter battles an alien monster, loses 300 attack and defense for each A counter during damage calculation only. You do need that because other, I don't know, it's a weird ruling thing, but it's just how it is. I do think that Overlord has an additional thing to this, where I think most monsters with this effect don't say lose 300 attack from defense for each A counter. I could be wrong about that. Oh no, I guess it does. Yeah, Kid does well. I guess I never really quite knew how that worked. It never really comes up often enough to really see play. But yeah, so it's pretty good. You can only have 1 Alien Overlord, so makes sense. It's a very powerful card, and if you could just stack tons and tons of A counters on things, that'd be pretty good. If you want to get those 2 A counters on field, you get Alien Dog, which can help you out there. 1500 attack point Reptile. Level 3, when you normal summon an alien monster, you can split summon this card from your hand, and when you do, place 2 A counters on face-up monsters your opponent controls. So you can just normal summon an alien, split summon out a dog, bring out the Overlord by removing those counters, and then put counters on everything else with the Overlord again. So I think that's a pretty good combo there. And so I do like Dog for what it does for the deck. Kid is a bit more hit and miss. I don't really think this thing is that good in the context of the deck, but it is something that you can do. Level 4 light and 1600 attack, 600 defense. So place 1 A counter on all monsters special summon to your opponent's side of the field. And if a monster with an A counter battles, yada, yada, yada. But I think it's kind of underwhelming compared to the other support. Like, I think it's fine, and it will come up a fair bit, I think. But, like, I don't know. Dog just has a very clear purpose. Ammonite has a clear purpose. I think Kid just is kind of, like, there to be there and potentially have, like, a pseudo floodgate. But it's not really that good in my opinion. But moving on to the spell traps are also kind of nuts beyond just Code Ancient Ruins. We got Mysterious Triangle here, the quick click spell that says destroy 1 monster on the field with an A counter. Then you can spell summon 1 level 4 alien monster from your deck, destroy during the end phase. That's pretty good though. It's a pop that also brings out a monster for more extension, so I like that a lot. We also have Plant Pollutant Virus, which is kind of cracked as well. It says tribute 1 face-up, or 1 alien monster, doesn't have to be face-up, and destroy all face-up monsters without A counters your opponent controls until the end of your opponent's 3rd turn after this card's activation. Place 1 A counter on each monster they summon. So that is very, very good. It's a board wipe, and you might be wondering how, you can really take full advantage of this when your opponent has a monster with A counters on it, but you can use things like the removal of the 2 counters with Golgar, or removing the 2 counters with Overlord, or things like that. You can manipulate things to get into a point where, like, the monsters that you care about don't have A counters and use this thing. So I like this thing a lot. I think it's pretty good. I think it's one of the main reasons to play aliens. Even if it's not as good as some of the other virus cards in the format, I think it's still pretty good. Lastly, or not quite lastly, but nextly we got frogs. Who would have guessed that this would have gotten support here? They've been adding a little bit of support here and there for this strategy over time. And now they get some of the most iconic support cards in the form of Dupe Frog and Flip Flop Frog. Dupe Frog is a level 2 Aqua, 100 attack, 2000 defense. This card's name becomes Death Frog while on field. Monster your opponent controls cannot target monster for attack except this one. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add one frog monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand except Dupe Frog. So this is great. It can form a lock. If you got another Dupe Frog, it can get a search for you. So this thing is very, very good for the deck in my opinion. And just another way that the deck just gets better over time. Next up, we get Flip Flop Frog. It's a level 2 Aqua, 500 attack, 200 defense. It says one per turn, you can flip this card into face down defense position. When this card flip face up, you can turn monsters your opponent controls to their owner's hand up to the number of frog monsters you control, except for Frog the Jam. So if you have the Dupe Frog lock online, you can flip up Flip Flop Frog, bounce a bunch of things to your opponent's hand, and just go ham. Attack in with your low attack monsters, and just deal a fair amount of damage, and chip away at them every turn. So kind of a neat game plan there. The last frog monster, I don't know why this thing is here. But it's neat, it's cute, it's Submarine Frog, level 2 Aqua, 1200 attack, 600 defense. During battle between this attacking card and defense monster whose defense is lower than the attack of this card, inflict the difference as battle damage to your opponent. It's piercing, for whatever reason. Weak monster overall. Not really worth playing in a frog deck unless you really need an extra name for whatever reason, but it's something that's there. I don't think frogs are really that good. Swap Frog is not out yet, so you can't really brew with that, but I think that it's cool to see the deck just getting more and more tools over time. And eventually they'll culminate into horrors, just so much horror. But it is kind of cute for now. And so I think it's cool to have around now. Lastly, for the cards in the main deck here, we've got 6 Scrolls of the Samurai, which is a quick play spell to tribute 2 face-up 6 Samurai monsters, spell summon 1 Great Shogun Shien from your deck. That's a good way to search out Shien. Shien's a pretty good card in 6 Sams. Is it enough? I don't really think so. 6 Sams can have a bit of a tough time getting to 6 Sams on field anyways. So I don't really think this card alleviates the problem that the deck has. If anything, it just puts another brick in the deck. So I don't really think this thing is that good. And also, if you do get 2 6 Sams on field, one of them is probably going to be Grandmaster. You don't really want to tribute Grandmaster. You want to get it destroyed by an opponent's card effect. So that way you can recur something else with it. So I don't really think this thing is that good. Lastly, I meant to talk about this thing a lot earlier, but I forgot to do it. We get Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. This thing is very, very relevant for a lot of different decks. This is a level 8 fusion machine. 0 attack, 0 defense, made with Cyber Dragon and 1 or more machine monsters, and cannot be used as fusion material. Must first be spell summoned from your extra deck by sending the above card from either field to the graveyard. The original attack of this card becomes 1,000 times the number of materials used for its spell summon. So the fact that you can use things on either field makes this thing very, very dangerous for machine decks, because any machine deck, if they've got their field set up, your opponent can just side in Cyber Dragon, bring out that Cyber Dragon, and then contact fusion the Chimera Tech to wipe the entire field. That makes it very, very scary. It's also another card that you can bring out off of, actually, I'm not sure if you even can use this with Future Fusion, but you get Chimera Tech Overdrive either way to, pair with it that way. But it's just very, very powerful for what I brought up with machine decks. So machine decks are not really going to be that good with Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon around. They can do things in later formats when they get better cards, but right now I don't really think they have the cards to actually make something good with Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon running around. But that's going to do it for the archetypal support. Now, a lot of early 5Ds didn't just focus on archetypes, it also focused a lot on types. So there's a lot of typal support as well. So let's go through that before diving through all the miscellaneous cards that were also in these sets. Now, I could have potentially talked about this first card in the archetypal support thing, because Red Eyes is technically an archetype by this point, but Red Eyes Dark Metal Dragon is more of just a dragon tool in general, because this thing is so good for dragons, and it single-handedly makes the deck a deck, really. This is a level 10, I believe. I can't quite count levels on the fly. With a level 10 dragon, 28 attack, 24 in defense, you can spell summon this card from your hand by banishing 1 face-up dragon monster you control. You can only spell summon Darkness Metal Dragon once per turn this way. And then during your main phase, during your main phase, you can spell summon 1 dragon monster from your hand or graveyard, except for Red Eyes Dark Metal Dragon. And it says you can only use the effect of Red Eyes Dark Metal Dragon once per turn. That's an errata. That's not the case in this format. So you can indeed use the effect multiple times per turn at least it's not a hard once. You can only use the effect of each one once per turn, but if you have multiple on field, you can use multiple effects. So this thing, very, very good. It just makes Dragons a really good deck. Again, I mentioned Future Fusion earlier in the video. If you go Future Fusion, send some Red Eyes Dark Metal Dragons and some Red Eyes Wyverns, you can bring back the Metal Dragons with the Wyverns in the end phase. And then on the following turn, if you send some other dragons as well, you can bring back those with the Metal Dragons. It's just absolutely crazy. And this will be sort of part of the backbone of Dragon Turbo. I think you maybe make that deck in this format, although maybe not. I'd have to look into that a bit. But this thing, very, very good. And very, very, rough to play against if you're playing against the dragon deck. Although it's not the only dragon support card, there were some others. Tome Dragon is another one, level 2 dragon, 400 attack, 200 defense. So this card can be treated as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of a dragon monster, then once per turn during your standby phase. If this card is in your graveyard and all monsters in your graveyard are dragon, you can spell summon this card in attack position, but banish it when it leaves the field. You must control no monsters to activate and to resolve this effect. So this is just a guy you can bring out, potentially serve as 2 tributes for only a blue eyes, or just serve as the banish for a red metal dragon. So very, very good card all around. We also have Hardened Arm Dragon for another card that sort of allows you to tribute summon out dragons more easily. It's a 1500 attack point dragon. It's not treated as an arm dragon. Very important to note. And you can spell summon this card from your hand by setting 1 level 8 or higher monster from your hand to the graveyard. If you tribute this card for a tribute summon of a level 7 or higher monster, that monster cannot be destroyed by card effects, which is very, very nice. So it could be something that you consider with that. But I think also ultimately it's important because it gets a dragon on the field for Rise Dark Metal Dragon that you can banish, bring that out, and then bring back to the level 8 or higher monster if that was a dragon that you pitched for it. So I think that it does synergize with the deck. It might be a little bit too bricky for some of the combos the deck wants to be doing, but I think it's still pretty good. Vanguard of the Dragon is a level 4 dragon, 1700 attack, 1300 defense, so you can send 1 dragon monster from your hand to the graveyard. This card gains 300 attack. When this card you control is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you can target 1 dragon normal monster in either graveyard, spell summon that target. So this thing, I think, is pretty good because you can set up your graveyard by sending a dragon to it from hand to grave. And then you can also bring back a dragon normal monster like Blue Eyes White Dragon. So if you want to incorporate Blue Eyes White Dragon into your deck, this could potentially be something that you could use with it. Although if it's destroyed by battle, you won't get that back. It still is decent overall, I think. Next up, we got Strong Winged Dragon, the level 6 dragon. 24 attack, 1000 defense, says cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster that's the same attack. If this card tribute summoned by tributing a dragon monster, it gains attack equal to half the original attack of the tribute monster. And then if this card attacks a defense monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. Is it the best thing in the world? No. Is it another dragon boss monster? Yeah, so it's fine. Next up, we've got Lava Dragon, a level 4 dragon monster, 1600 attack, 1200 defense. It says you contribute this face-up defensive card to spell summon two level 3 or lower dragon type monsters, 1 from your hand and 1 from your graveyard. This thing just seems really bad. I mean, I don't see what the purpose of it would be, right? Maybe setting up for a tribute summon of a monster, but like you'd have to have this out already, and it's just like, it's awkward. Rise Dark Metal Dragon, something out from hand and grave a lot easier. So I don't really think this thing is that good, but it's something you can play if you want to in a dragon deck. Lastly, for the main deck dragons, we got Debris Dragon here, the level 4 dragon tuner, 1000 attack, 2000 defense. Says when this card normal summon, you can target 1 monster for 500 less attack in your graveyard. Spell summon that target in attack position, but negate its effect. Cannot be used for a single material except for the single summon of a dragon monster. The other single materials cannot be level 4. So a lot of sort of conditions to this, but this thing is actually really good. With a level 3 monster that you bring back, like potentially Dandelion, which we'll get to in a second, you can go into level 7 dragon that could be either Black Rose Dragon, which can blow up the board, or it could even be a new dragon monster here. Although to do that, you'd need to have a level 3 dragon that you'd bring back, so you couldn't quite do this off Dandelion. But you could go into Exploder Dragon Wing, level 7 Dragon Synchro, 24 attack, 1600 defense, says 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuner dragon type monsters. And at the start of the damage step, if this card battles a monster, you can destroy that monster. And if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack the destroyed monster had on the field. This card's attack must be greater than or equal to the attack of that monster to activate and resolve this effect. So is that the best thing in the world? No. Is it a thing you can do? Sure. And this can deal with the stally cards like Spirit Reaper, Marshmallow, etc. and deal a bit of damage as well. We also have another Dragon Synchro in the form of Dragion. This thing is a lot harder to make, honestly. But if you do make it, it's pretty decent. It is a 3000 attack point defense point monster made with 1 dragon tuner and 1 or more non-tuner dragon monsters. Must be synchro summoned. When this card is synchro summoned, you can target up to 2 other cards you control. Destroy those targets, and if you do, for each card destroyed, this card gains 1 additional attack during each battle phase this turn. So this see play in Modern, actually, and certain decks there. But this is where it got to start. Is it that good? Not really. It's very, very tough to bring out because level 10 is kind of hard to bring out off of things like Debris Dragon. So I don't really know of a line that can easily bring out the Trident Dragon. And then on top of that, you've probably sunk a lot of monsters into it. And then you have to pop 2 cards in addition to that to actually get this thing to attack multiple times. But if you are able to make this work, then it can be pretty decent, I guess, at just getting a ton of damage out on board. Nextly, I mentioned Dandelion because probably the best target to bring back off Debris Dragon here. But Dandelion is one of many sort of plant support cards released in these sets as well. Plants getting a big boom because it was played by one of the main characters of the 5D's anime in the first season, at least, which is Akiza. So Dandelion, very good level 3 Earth Plant, 300 attack, 300 defense, and if it's sent to the graveyard, special summon 2 fluff tokens in defense position. They're level 1, 0 attack, 0 defense. These tokens cannot be tributed for a tribute summon during the turn they are special summon, so a couple notes about that. They can be tributed after that turn. So if this is sent to your graveyard during your opponent's turn, you can then tribute those tokens no problem on your turn. They can be used for synchro summon on the turn they're brought out, so you can do that as well. And they are plants, so you can tribute them for things like Titanial, that effect. So just very, very good card for plants in general. And yeah, this thing definitely sees a lot of play in a variety of different decks, but plants especially. Twilight Rose Knight is not a plant itself, but is a warrior tuner that synergizes with plants pretty well. It's level 3, 1000 attack, 1000 defense point monster, so it does pair with Crush Card. Just cursed knowledge that I'm giving you right there. And it says monster your opponent control cannot target plant monsters for attack. That doesn't really come up that often. But what does come up would be when this card normal summon, you can special summon 1 level 4 lower plant monster from your hand. So this is an instant synchro fodder right there. You go into Twilight Rose Knight, potentially bring out the Dandelion, go into like either Queen of Thorns, or you could go into Goyo Guardian, or there's just a lot of things you can do with this. Very, very good card for the deck if you want to build a pure plant deck that wants to do synchro plays. I think this is definitely a card that you can consider. Although that's not necessarily where plant decks are necessarily going to be going, given some of the new boss monsters introduced. Phoenician Cluster Amaryllis is a really interesting card. Level 8 fire plant, 20 attack, 0 defense. Cannot be special summoned except with its own effect or with the effect of Phoenician Seed, which is just a weak monster that says you can send this face-up card to the graveyard. Special summon 1 Phoenician Cluster Amaryllis from your hand. But if this card attacks or is attacked, it is destroyed. Actually, it's only if it attacked. I always thought it was if it was attacked as well, but nope, it's just if this card attacks, it's destroyed after damage calculation. If this card you control is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, inflict 800 damage to your opponent. During your end phase, you can remove and play 1 plant type monster from your graveyard. Special summon this card from your graveyard in defense position. Now, that may seem underwhelming on first glance because it can attack in, but it's brings back in defense position and it's destroyed when it attacks in, and like, what's it really going to do? But you can put your opponent into some very awkward spots, just dealing a lot of burn damage in, and basically dropping your opponent's life points low enough where 1 Phoenician Cluster Amaryllis is just a death sentence for them. So I think this is actually very interesting, especially with cards safe return in the format. I think it would be neat to sort of experiment with Amaryllis. That did get explored in one of the past locals that we had in cat format, so I definitely want to show off that deck on the channel, or a deck like it. So I'll be tinkering with my own version of the plant Amaryllis deck for this format. But I think it could be kind of fun. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And I look forward to that as well if you're interested in that sort of deck. Next up, we got Rose Tentacles. This is definitely the worst boss monster of the plant ones introduced so far. It can't be special summoned, 2200 attack, level 6. And at the start of your battle phase, for each plant monster opponent currently controls, this card gains 1 additional attack during each battle phase this turn. Each time this card destroys a plant monster by battle, inflict 300 damage to your opponent. Now, this can go back to some of the plant monsters that I mentioned in the TeleDAD guide, which give your opponent a plant monster token. So you can pair it with that. So I think it's meant to go along with that series of cards. That series of cards is not the best, but it's something you can do with it. It can also pair with Black Garden very well, because you can attack over all your Rose tokens there. You can also pair it with the card Ivy Shackles with continuous trap. It says all face-up monster opponent controls become plant type during your turns only. And then if this face-up card you control is destroyed and sent to your graveyard by an opponent's card effect, draw 1 card. So that means that you can potentially use this to set up a Rose Tentacle play if you want to. And also it draws you a card if it's destroyed by an opponent's card effect. So that's pretty decent as well. Is that worth playing? It's kind of convoluted, so I would say no, but it's something you can do if you want to. If you want your plant monster to attack multiple times, you can also use Wonder Clover, the normal spell. It's to select 1 face-up monster you control and send 1 level 4 plant-type monster from your hand to the graveyard. During this turn, the selected monster can attack twice, but other monsters you control cannot declare an attack. So this can sort of allow you to attack multiple times with things, but is that really worth it? Probably not. I don't think there are like too many monsters in the plant deck that you really want this effect for, except for Rose Tentacles, which gets it itself. So, I think that this thing is not that good, but it's something you can play if you want to. Next up, we got Thorn of Malice. This can potentially pair with Wonder Clover, which is why I'm talking about it here. An equipped spell that says equip only to a Black Rose Dragon or a plant monster, gain 600 attack. If the equipped monster attacks a defensive monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. If the equipped monster attacks a monster after damage calculation, the attacked monster loses 600 attack and defense. An opponent's monster that battles with the equipped monster cannot be destroyed by battle. So the idea is that this is weakening your opponent's monster, and so if you want to attack into it multiple times, you can with something like, the Wonder Clover, right? But I don't think the thing is that good. It does give your monster 600 attacks, so that's neat. But, is that worth it? Probably not. So I just don't really like this card overall. Next up, we got more plant monsters. Hedgeguard. Speaking of not being able to be destroyed by battle, level 3 plant, 0 attack, 100 defense. During damage calculation, either player's turn, when a monster you control attacks or is attacked, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, have the attack of that monster you control until the end of this turn, but that monster cannot be destroyed by battle, or that battle, that is. So this is actually a card that sees play in Gladbeast sometimes, because it can come up in that deck, and pretty nice hand trap for that deck. But in the plant deck, doesn't really do too much overall. Yeah, so I just don't really think that good in the plant deck, but it's good otherwhere in other places. So yeah, it can be decent. Next up, we got a card that's very good in the plant deck, in my opinion. Wall of Thorns. The normal trap that says when a plant type monster you control is targeted for an attack, destroy all attacks as a monster your opponent controls. Now you can argue this thing is not really that good in plants because their goal is to bring out like big guys like Titanium and things like that. Which, you don't really need Wall of Thorns to, get rid of your opponent's things. But it's still kind of cool. It's a Mirror Force at 3, basically, for plants. So it's kind of cool. Next up, we got Dark Verger. Dark Verger is a level 2 plant. There's a 0 attack and 1000 defense. When a plant type tuner monster is normal summon to your side of the field, you can special summon this card from your graveyard in attack position. So this is pretty good, setting up more synchro plays, just like with Twilight Rose Knight. If you summon out a plant tuner like Nettles, bring this thing back, go into a level 4, which there actually is a level 4 synchro now, so that's something there. You can make stuff happen. Unfortunately, there aren't any more plant tuners, I believe, at this point in the game's history. So you can't really use this too much. Copy Plant, I guess you could use as well, but that doesn't really help you there. But it's cool to have like a recurable Quibbled Hedgehog, basically. And yeah, so this isn't terrible. It's just not really that good. Next up, we get Evil Thorn, level 1. Plant 100 attack, 300 defense. So you can tribute this card and inflict 300 damage to your opponent. If you do, special summon up to 2 Evil Thorns from your deck in attack position, but their effects cannot be activated. So use this, deal 300 damage, and then you get out 2 more. You potentially even pair the burn damage with something like Seed Cannon. So that's like 2 summons of it, 2 plant counters here, because this says each time a plant type monster is summoned, place 1 plant counter on this card. You can send this card to the graveyard and inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each plant counter on it. So you summon out Evil Thorn, that's 1 plant counter. Use effect, bring out 2 more Evil Thorns, and that's 2 plant counters on it. So that's something. Not good, but it's something. It's burn, I guess. I guess you can play a plant burn deck with the Amaryllis as well. So, I could maybe see an Amaryllis. You just keep stacking those burn counters on the Amaryllis, but I don't really think this thing is the best in the world, in my opinion. But moving on to a card that I think actually is kind of decent, we got Super Solar Nutrient. This is a continuous spell. This is activate this card by triggering 1 level 2 or lower plant type monster. Supposed to summon 1 plant type monster from your hand or deck, whose level is less than or equal to the level the attributed monster had on the field, plus 3. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. When that monster leaves the field, destroy this card. So this is a good way to take advantage of things like your Dark Verger, like your Evil Thorn, that just come back. And you bring out a big plant guy, or a better plant guy at least, because you can bring out like Lone Fire Blossom, go into something else. So I do think this thing is not bad. And it does see play in some Gigaplant lists in Edison format. So that's some shameless, Gigaplant hype content in cat format, I guess. Although I'm not sure the deck can really compete in cat format. Who knows? I could be proven wrong there. Next up, we've got Overdoom line. The continuous trap says if a plant type monster or monster is special summoned from the graveyard to your side of the field, it gains 1000 attack while this card is face up on the field. Destroy this card during your second end phase after activation. So, yeah, this is not bad for the plant deck, especially if you've got Gigaplant in play. It pairs with Dark Verger, I guess, as well. But frankly, it's kind of like not really the best. Plant decks don't necessarily need to buff up their monsters a ton. They kind of just want to do their plays. And, yeah, so I don't really think this thing is that bad. Or that good, that is. You can tell it's been a long recording session because I'm starting to mix up my words a bit. So, yeah, bear with me for it. Not too much longer. But, yeah, this thing is not really the best in my opinion, especially since it doesn't really last that long as a continuous trap. Next up, we got In Motto, level 3 Dark, Plant, 1400 attack, 800 defense. So this is Mystic Tomato's delinquent brother, I guess. And it said, when one other face-up plant-type monster is targeted by the effect of a spell or trap card your opponent controls, you contribute this card to draw 2 cards. Not terrible. However, it doesn't stop the spell trap effect, so not the best there. And you're kind of losing 2 cards probably either way, because you're probably losing the plant that's targeted, and you're losing this card as well. So I don't think this thing is that good. It's kind of just trades in value, but it's kind of interesting to see here. Next up, this is not a plant, but it's Violet Witch. Level 4 Dark Spellcaster, 1100 attack, 1200 defense. Says if this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, add 1 plant type monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hands. So this is basically Witch of the Black Forest just for plants. That's kind of what they were going for here, having the same stat line and also calling it Violet Witch. But, Witch of the Black Forest, very good. So Witch of the Black Forest plants, if you're playing a plant deck, probably pretty good. So, yeah, might be something that you consider playing in that deck. Although, destroyed by battle only is kind of rough. Next up, since we're talking about plants, let's actually talk about insects as well. Actually, we could just talk about zombies to keep the theming going, but I'm talking about outdoor things, so I'm talking about insects first. We'll get to zombies eventually. Uh, Insects did get some new things. They're not really that good. Crossword Beetle is a level 4 wind insect, 18 attack, total defense. That's why you control another insect monster. If an insect monster you control attacks a position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. So a lot of piercing effects in these sets here for whatever reason. Desert Protector, level 4 earth insect, 800 attack, 1000 defense. This card gains 300 defense for each spell trap card on the field. If an insect type monster you control will be destroyed, you can destroy this card instead. So it can protect your other things. And it just gains defense, so it's kind of meant to be a wall there as well. So we got something that helps with offense, something that helps with defense, neither of which I think are that good. Yeah, I mean, it's just like Desert Protector, very situational in terms of actually getting enough defense to actually be good. And Crossword Beetle, piercing is kind of situational. When it comes on a card that's already good, you kind of like it, but when it's just the only thing of a card, it's not really that good. So I don't really think either of these are going to make a difference for insects. We got B-list Soldier as well, which I don't think will make a difference as well. Level 1 wind insect, 500 attack, 400 defense. So you can tribute this card in one face-up insect monster except B-list Soldier. Draw 2 cards. So again, kind of like with Cherry and Motto. I also knocked my mic off there. This was such a crazy card. It's kind of like with Cherry and Motto, where you're kind of going neutral on the cards you're getting. Except this is just like codifying that entirely. There's no way you're not going neutral on the cards you're getting because you're tributing 2 cards and you're gaining 2 cards. So just complete neutrality there. Verdant Sanctuary, continuous spell that says when a face-up insect monster is destroyed by battle or card effect inside of the graveyard, its controller can add 1 insect level monster with the same level of destroyed monster from their deck to their hand. I think it's actually a good one for the deck because you get to just keep cycling your insects and keep getting new insects. So I think that's not bad. Are insect good enough to really use it? Probably not. I don't think there's anything they can really do right now. But it's interesting, and I could see maybe like getting another Doom Dozer after Doom Dozer's destroyed, and then bring out that Doom Dozer with the Doom Dozer engraved, another one. So I could see this having a place. I just don't really think it's that good, in my opinion. But speaking of sticking to things outdoors, we got beasts as well. I already mentioned some beasts in the format that are important to note. Rescue Cat, very important. The Airbellums are good to know. Moja and all that stuff are good to know as well. But there are just some beasts that are just generally for the beasts, Tree Otter's one of them. A level 2 water beast, 1200 attack, 100 defense, 1 per turn. You can target 1 face-up monster you control. It gains 1000 attack until the end of this turn. You must control a beast-type monster other than this card to activate and to resolve this effect. So it buffs up either your other beast or itself, or just another monster, and you just have another beast situationally on top of it. So you can bring this out off Rescue Cat as well. So it's an interesting card that potentially increases your damage output. Berserking is a continuous trap. It's TCG exclusive at this point for some reason. It says 1 per turn during your main phase or your opponent's battle phase. You can select 2 face-up beast-type monsters on the field until the end of this turn. One of the selected monsters loses half its attack, and the other monster gains an equal amount of attack. So there's a way that you can potentially, buff up your monsters to just get a big guy on field, or potentially just to protect one of your monsters that's being attacked. But I don't think this thing is that good. It's kind of situational. You got other things that can help out your beast monster a little bit better. So I don't really think this thing is worth playing. Lastly, for the beasts, we got Minoan Centaur. Actually, the Beast Warrior, but it's still a Beast Warrior type thing, so it belonged in this section at least. Level 6 Earth Beast Warrior, 1800 attack, 1000 defense. This card cannot be spell summoned. Tribute this card to spell summon 2 level 4 Beast Warrior type normal monsters from your deck. This is kind of like a rescue card, which is interesting enough. I don't know why they didn't call it like Rescue Centaur, but this thing is not good. This thing is really not good. One, there's not really anything you can do with the level 4 Beast Warrior type normal monsters that you get. And 2, it's a tribute monster. 3, you can't spell summon it. All around bad. All around really bad. I don't think I need to say more. But since we're on the beast train, let's talk about winged beasts as well. Now, a lot of these support cards would be very good to slot into a Blackwing deck if you want to play them, because Blackwings are all winged beasts, so the idea is that these support those, and these are more TCG exclusives. Hooray. Battlestorm is a level 4 Dark Winged Beast, 1700 attack, 1000 defense. So this card gains 100 attack for each Beast Warrior type monster you control. Once per turn, you can target 1 spell trap your opponent controls, destroy that target. You must control 3 or more Winged Beast type monsters to activate and to resolve this effect. Now, this is something you could play in Blackwings if you want to. If they've got 3 Blackwings on field, then you use this effect and you go crazy with it. However, if you're playing this and that, why don't you just play Delta Crow Anti-Reverse, right? It pairs with the deck a little bit more. It can be used in more situations. You just have to set it for a turn. And lastly, if you got 3 Blackwings on your field, you can use it, clear away the back row, and then bring out a different normal summon or spell summon, or I guess just normal summon instead of Battlestorm. So this thing, not really that good when there's a card that kind of power creeps it entirely instead. Next up, we got Swallow's Nest, not Shallow's Nest. This is a quick play spell that says tribute 1 face-up winged beast type monster. Supposed to summon 1 winged beast monster from your deck with the same level the tribute monster had on the field. So it's kind of like Insect Imitation, except quick play, so a bit better. And yeah, I think this is pretty good. You can cycle out your Black Wings, I guess. Not terrible. Not the best thing in the world, but it gets a bit more extra damage, so I don't hate it. But yeah, it's there to play if you want to. Next up, we move on to Psychics, which are sort of the other poster child of the 5Ds era. This was not really played that much in the anime until later on. But this is a fun set of monsters that can sort of do interesting stuff, manipulating the life points, and so I like them. I always have a soft spot in my heart for Psychics. Let's start with their new boss monster, Master Gig, the level 8 Earth Psychic, 2600 attack, 1400 defense. Says 1 per turn, you can pay 1000 life points to destroy monster your opponent controls equal to the number of face-up psychic monsters that you control. That's pretty good. Now, as a note, it has to be equal, so if you've got more psychics than your opponent's monsters, I don't think you can use this effect. But it's still pretty good just to deal with certain situations where, you know, even if this is the only monster on your field, you get to pop 1, so that's pretty good. And 2600 attack, but it's nothing to scoff at. Now, the Hyper Psychic Blaster is probably the bigger boss monster, released 4 psychics right now. But you can go into that off of Gig and like a Mind Master, so it's not terrible. Next up, we've got a Reinforced Human Psychic Borg, the level 4 Earth Psychic, 1500 attack, 800 defense. It says up to twice per turn, you can banish 1 psychic monster from your graveyard to have this card gain 500 attack. So first turn, you bring this thing out, you can buff it up to 2500. If it survives a turn, you can buff it up to 3500. That's a lot of damage coming in there. So I actually think this thing is quite good for the deck. It's a beat stick, sure, but sometimes if your beat stick is sticky enough or beat sticky enough, then it's good enough. And I think this thing is not bad. You can also pair it with things like Psychic Path, which allows you to pay 800 life points to select up to 2 of your removed from play Psychic type monsters, add them to your hand. So you can pair it with that, get things back, and that's pretty good there. So there are different things you can do with it. Life Force Harmonizer is a level 2 Psychic monster that says, when your opponent activates a card effect that inflicts damage, you can discard this card to negate its activation and destroy it. So not bad. There's another card called Hanawata, which is, I'm not sure if that's out yet or not. I can double check that as well before going to the last section of the video, but it does a similar thing, but this also negates the activation and destroys it, which I believe Hanawata does not do. But Hanawata might not be out yet. I need to double check that. Still a pretty good card, especially for Psychics. And especially good against Dark Strike Fighter as well. Next up, we got Telekinetic Powerwell, the quick play spell that says special summon any number of level 2 or lower Psychic type monsters from your graveyard. You take damage equal to the total levels of those monsters times 300. So this is good at extending even further. You do take a fair amount of damage, but you get to bring out a ton of tuners. You get to bring out a ton of non-tuner Psychics that have just that low level. So this thing is pretty good in my opinion. Next up, we got Psychic Sword. An equip spell that says equip only to a Psychic type monster while your life points are lower than your opponent's. The equipped monster gains attack equal to the difference, max 2000. So this can be a very, very big buff, but it will only be a big buff for a short period of time, kind of like Megamorph. If you attack in with it too much, then, you know, the life points will reverse and you won't really be getting that much of a boost from it. But still, you know, not a terrible card by any means. It's just a card that the deck can play if they want to. Especially in Constructed, I could see it being good if you want to do that. Or not Constructed, Draft, it could be good. Again, very, very late into the recording, so that's how it goes sometimes. Anyways, for the traps, Psychic's got Supernatural Regeneration, a normal trap that says activate only during the end phase, gain 1000 life points for each Psychic type monster sent to the graveyard this turn. So, you know, this can gain you back a lot of life, and it's paired with Destructron, so what you can do is you can use Destructron as a glass can, bring it out, pop your opponent's back row, activate Regeneration to at least gain some life points when it destroys itself because you've got no other Psychics. Not the best line of attack in my opinion, but it's something you can do. Next up, we've got a continuous trap, Psychic Tuning. It says select 1 Psychic type monster in your graveyard and spell summon it in attack position. It's treated as a tuner monster. When this card is removed from the field, destroy that monster. When that monster is removed from the field, destroy this card. When this card is sent to the graveyard, take damage equal to that monster's level times 400. Now, this is basically calling the Haunted Force Psychics, and it is great. It also makes that monster a tuner, so you can go into synchro plays as well. This thing is just very, very good for Psychics, and yeah, just a great card all around. Next up, we've got Black Salvo for Machines. Now, I bring this up because it can bring back things from the graveyard as well, and it can go into some interesting synchro plays. It's a level 3 tuner, 100 attack, 1100 defense. So when this card normal summoned, you can target 1 level 4 Dark Machine type monster in your graveyard. Supposed to summon that target defense position when its effects are negated. So you can bring back things like Dekoichi. You can bring back things like Mechanical Chaser. You can bring back things like Cannon Soldier, I guess. There aren't many good level 4 Dark Machines that you're playing around with, but if you can bring them back, you can go to level 7. That could either be something like Black Rose, or it could be something like Dark Strike Fighter in this format. So that is a good way to get into that. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I think that Rescue Cat plays are just better. Like if you go Summoner Monk into Rescue Cat into Airbellums, you get into a level 7 a lot easier than this thing. So I don't think this is the best thing in the world, but it is a crush card target, so it's not bad. That being said, though, Summoner Monk is also a crush card target, so do with that what you will. Next up, we've got Bone Crusher, the level 4 Earth Zombie, 1600 attack, 200 defense. Says when this card is special summoned from your graveyard by the effect of a zombie-type monster, you can target one spell trap your opponent controls, destroy that target. During the end phase of the turn, this card is special summoned, destroy it. So this is something that you can use with the Doom Kaiser Dragon Assault mode, I guess, when it brings this thing back, but I think it's not really that good. I mean, it's not terrible, right? If you're doing synchro plays with it, you bring it back, pop a card, synchro with it into something else, and there you go. But, like, is this thing going to happen all that often? No, probably not. Are there better things you could play? Probably, yeah. Next up, we've got Immortal Ruler, the level 4 Earth Zombie-type monster, 1800 attack, 200 defense, that cannot be special summoned. You tribute this card, then target one zombie world in your graveyard. Add that target to your hand. So the way to recur Zombie World, which if you want to play a Zombie World version of the deck, you can play this. Is that good? I don't know. You're using a normal summon to do that, but zombies don't necessarily need their normal summon as much as other decks. So I don't know. Judge for yourself whether you want to play this or not. I would say probably not, because Zombie World versions of the deck are not really that good in the first place, but it's something you can play if you want to. Moving on to Warriors, keeping the theme of adding things back to the graveyard of the hand. We've got Spirit Force, a normal trap that says during your opponent's turn at damage calculation, make the battle damage you take from this battle 0. Then you can add one Warrior type tuner with 1500 or less defense from your graveyard to your hand. So that could be Junk Synchron. That could be the newly released Tore Apart, level 2 Warrior Tuner. 600 attack, 600 defense says this card cannot be used as a synchro material monster except for the synchro summon of a Warrior Synchro monster. If this synchro monster that used this card's synchro material monster attacks, your opponent cannot activate trap cards until the end of the damage step. So this can insulate things like Goyo Guardian, which is a level 6, which would work quite well with that. I usually need a level 4 monster. Could insulate things like Colossus Fighter as well. So there's some different things that you can use this for. Is it the best thing in the world? No. To crush card fires, though. So, you can tribute this for crush card. Not bad. So I don't know. Do what you want with this card. Assault Armor, equip spell. Equip only to a warrior type monster. That is the only monster you control. It gains 300 attack during your main phase 1. You send this equip card to the graveyard to allow the equipped monster to attack twice during each battle phase this turn. So, it's just a way to get more aggressive with your warriors. Is it the best thing in the world? No. But is it fine? Sure, it's fine. Like, I don't think warriors necessarily need this compared to some other things that they'd probably need, but if they want to get aggressive, they can play this. Next up, we got Turret Warrior, level 5 warrior, 1200 attack, 2000 defense. So you can special summon this card from your hand by treating a 1 warrior monster, and if you do, it gains attack equal to the tribute monster's original attack. So this can get up to pretty high heights, depending on the warrior that you tribute. So that's fine. That's just like a beat stick at the end of the day. So not really the best thing in the world, but it's something fun that you can play. So I used to play this on the playground a lot as a kid, so that's fun. Next up, we got Tethys, Goddess of Light, level 5 Light Fairy, 2400 attack, 1800 defense. This is when you draw a fairy monster or monsters, except during the damage step, you can reveal one of those monsters, draw one card. This card must be face up on the field to activate and resolve this effect. I mean, this is fine. Like, this is honestly probably more than fine, but fairies themselves don't really have much they're building to. So, I don't really know if that deck, really needs this right now versus something else, which they might be getting next format. Hype for the next format already happening here. But yeah, this is just a fine card. And it can draw you a fair amount if you're playing a very fairy heavy deck. So that's pretty good. Next up, we get into a type of monster that honestly did not really get much support before this, but I'm glad they're getting some now. We got Sea Serpent, and Deep Sea Diva is the main one here. And this is definitely a very iconic card for a variety of reasons, but very, very good in, well, maybe not this format, but it gets better later on. But it's a level 2 water Sea Serpent tuner, 200 attack, 400 defense. It says when this card normal summon, you can spell summon one level 3 to lower Sea Serpent monster from your deck. That could either be another Deep Sea Diva for synchro climbing plays. That could also be a Spine Gilman, which is a level 3 Sea Serpent, 1300 attack, 0 defense. That all fish, Sea Serpent, and Aqua type monster you control gain 400 attack. So gives a bit of a buff there. It could also be Mermaid Archer, which is a level 3 water Sea Serpent, 1200 attack, 200 defense. Once per turn, you can target one face-up level 3 or lower monster you control. Equip that target to this card. You can only equip one monster like that at a time. While equipped with a monster by this effect, this card gains 800 attack. And then if this card would be destroyed, you can target, you can destroy the monster and equip to it instead, and keep this thing around. So, this thing can be a pretty beefy guy, I guess, in certain edge cases, but The main reason why you go into either of these things is because it lets you go into a level 5 synchro, which could potentially be something like Sea Dragon, Lord Gishilnadon, level 5 Sea Serpent synchro, 2300 attack, 1800 defense. It says when a face-up level 3 or lower monster on the field is sent to the graveyard, this card's attack becomes 3000 until the end phase of this turn. Might not seem like much, but this can boost it up when your opponent synchro summons with something. So that is good to know. It just sort of defends itself a little bit against an opponent's synchro summon play. It could even boost up on your turn with like other synchro plays that you're making. So this is something that you could potentially play in a deck. Is it better than Android? I don't quite know. But it's something that you can play if you want to. And it's kind of fun to have around here, especially with the new sort of interest in Sea Serpents with Diva and some others. But keeping it under the sea, the last card we have here is Royal Swampeel, a level 4 water fish tuner, 1800 attack, 1200 defense. So if this card uses synchro material monster, all the other synchro material monsters must be fish type. So there are some fish cards running around here. Oyster Meister is one of them. But the main reason why you play this thing is in a deck with deep sea. It's the Coelacanth card. It's after like 2.5 hours of recording, your brain's a bit fried, so I can't quite remember that card right now. Super Ancient Deep Sea King Coelacanth. That's what it is, I think. So there's a saying that I pulled it out. But anyway, you can make plays with that. And you can make some decent plays with it. I don't think it's the best thing in the world in this format, but it is something you can sack your opponent with. And Royal Swampeel helps make that dream a reality. Lastly, I know that this is the type section of the video, but we've got an attribute card here, so I figured I'd mention it. Gigastone Omega is an Earth level 5 rock, 1000 attack, 2300 defense. Says that this card cannot be a normal summoner set. This card can only be spell summoned by removing from play 2 Earth monsters from your graveyard. When this face-up card you control is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, destroy all spell and trap cards your opponent controls. So you can pop all your opponent's spell traps, just walls off your opponent. Can be extension, can make for synchro plays. Not terrible, but not bad either. I guess I said the same thing. It's not really the best card in the world. It's kind of just mediocre. I'm not sure if you'd really want to play this over other cards that can extend instead. But it's kind of fun to see running around here. That's going to do it for the types and archetypes. And the video not yet over. We still have another big section left. So buckle in, enjoy the ride as we dive into all these sort of miscellaneous cards that I couldn't fit into these previous sections. So this section will just go through all the new cards added to the format that I just couldn't really figure out where to place elsewise. And some of those cards I've talked about already, like Dark Strike Fighter, generic level 7 synchro, 2600 attack, 1800 defense, and you can distribute all your monsters, deal 200 damage to your opponent times the levels of the monster distributed. Crazy card that any deck can play, most likely, and the decks that really optimize playing it can just deal a ton of damage in one turn, OTK your opponent. It's just absolutely nuts. And one of the main ways you can do that is with Summoner Monk, which I mentioned already as well. 800 attack, 600 defense. While this card face up on the field, it cannot be attributed, but that doesn't really matter that much. And then if this card normal or flip summoned, change this card to defense position. Once per turn, you can discard 1 spell and special summon 1 level 4 monster from your deck, but that monster cannot attack this turn. Doesn't really matter if you just bring out Rescue Cat going into Double Air Bellum, and then syncing this off for either Dark Strike Fighter or Arcanite Magician, because it is a spellcaster, so this thing is nuts. You can also use it to bring out other monsters too. Like, it doesn't have to be Rescue Cat. There are situations where you want to go into other things, and you can do that as well. This thing is absolutely crazy. Makes sense why they semi-limited it here. There are some other good cards in the set, though, that I want to mention. Forbidden Chalice, quick play. Target 1 face-up monster on the field until the end of the turn. That target gains 400 attack, but its effects are negated. So this can be used either as effect negation. This can be used as buffing up your own monster. Very flexible card. Doesn't see much play in this format particularly, but I do think it's a card that will get better over time, and we'll see more play in the future. Next up, we got 1 for 1, a normal spell that lets you send 1 monster from your hand to the graveyard and special summon 1 level 1 monster from your hand or deck. I'd say in this format, there aren't really too many ways to abuse it outside of like bringing out Mind Master in certain psychic decks. But this card will just get better and better with time. So very good to know about. And if you're playing a Monarch deck, I'd say it's pretty good because you bring out Treeborn Frog and then you go into something else. So very good. Also, you can go into some frog plays like Subsitoad, which is level 1. So yeah, you can do so with that. Although, again, I don't think frogs really have much of an identity at this point. They kind of need Swap Frog to get that, truly. Trap Stun is also good for if you're playing a deck that, just wants to shut off your opponent's back row. Trap Stun is very good for that. It's kind of like Road Decree, but it only lasts a turn, so pretty good. This format also released a variety of boss monsters, which I won't say are the craziest things in the world, but they're decent enough to do stuff with, I will say. Beast King Barbaros is a level 8 Earth Beast Warrior, 3000 attack, 1200 defense. You normally summon this or set this card without tributing, but original attack of 1900. You can tribute 3 monster tribute, summon this. but not set this card. And if summoned this way, destroy all cards your opponent controls. So generally you play this in like a skill drain deck, where you bring this thing out as a 1900 beater, and then you activate skill drain, buff it up to 3000. Kind of like Fusilier in that way. But its second effect can come up if you pull it off. And if you do pull it off, it's pretty good. So not a bad card overall. Zeta Reticulant, very interesting card. Level 7 Dark Fairy, 24 in attack, 21 in defense. So that you contribute 1 EVA token to spell summon this card from your hand. And while this card is in your graveyard, each time a monster or monsters your opponent controls is removed from play, spell summon 1 EVA token, which is a Dark, level 2, 500 attack, 500 defense point fiend. This briefly had some, Time in the Sun Edison format, where people made a rogue deck out of it, and I think it's still it's regarded like a decent rogue deck there. It could be a bit better here because Crush Card contribute the EVA tokens, which is absolutely disgusting. But I don't know. I'm not sure if this will be enough to make it work. Again, it's kind of a slower deck, which you can't really have in a format like this, which is very, very fast paced, but it's not terrible. And the EVA tokens can be used for synchro plays as well. Next up, we've got Dark Voltanis on the topic of fairies, Dark Fairies specifically. The level 8 Dark, 28 attack, 1400 defense point monster says after one counter trap card you control has been activated and resolved, you contribute 1 Dark monster to spell summon this card from your hand. If this card is spell summoned in this way, destroy 1 card on the field. So this is sort of playing off the counter fairy stuff. However, fairies, for the most part, are not dark, so it doesn't really pair in that strategy that well. And most dark decks don't really need to play a ton of counter traps except for maybe Solemn Judgment. But I don't really think it's that good in decks that would play that. It's kind of a brick outside of Solemn, so I don't really think it's that good. Puppet King is a level 7 Earth Warrior, 2800 attack, 2600 defense. So when your opponent adds a monster or monsters cards to their hand, except by drawing, you can spell summon this card from your hand, and if you do, destroy it during your next turn's end phase. So it's not bad. It's just a big guy that's annoying for your opponent to deal with, but honestly, your opponent likely can deal with it. As I mentioned, Blackwings can, deal with this pretty easily, and Blackwings is probably what you're bringing this out against because, Black Whirlwind adds so much. So yeah, I don't really think this thing is that good, but it's something that you can play if you want to. But yeah, it's just kind of silly. Greed Quasar is a level 7 Fiend, question mark attack, question mark defense. And this card's original attack and defense are equal to its level times 300. And this monster level is increased by the level of monsters it's destroyed by battle, which is a really neat effect. I like this card a lot. I like the flavor of it. But it doesn't have any form of protection. It comes out at 2100, so I don't know if it's that good overall, especially for 2 tributes. Next up, we got Prime Material Falcon, level 5 Winged Beast. 22 attack, 800 defense. So when an effect monster's effect to destroy a spell or trap card on the field is activated, you send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to negate its activation and destroy the card. Now, as a note, this only works on effect monster effect, so is the thing that good? I would say probably not. There aren't like the most monsters that do that. I'd say in this format there are a bit more, like Archetype Magician, for instance, can stop that, but Archetype Magician can just pop this and then pop the spell that they wanted to pop, So I don't really think this is that good, but it is something you can play if you want to. Next up, we got Brain Golem, a freaky looking level 6 Dark Fiend, 2500 attack, 1800 defense. The effects of face-up light monsters are negated if this card destroys a light monster by battle. It can attack once again in a row. So this is anti-light tech. Is that going to be that good? Probably not, but it is something that you can play. Ito, the Supreme Magical Force, the level 6 Dark Fiend, 2200 attack, 800 defense, says you cannot summon or normal set monsters. You can only control 1 Ito, the Supreme Magical Force, once per turn during the standby phase of the next turn. After this card was destroyed by card effect and sent to the graveyard, you summon this card from the graveyard, and if you do, destroy all other monsters you control. So this is basically Vampire Lord, but much, much worse. So there's not really a reason to play it unless you really like that 200 attack game. Next up, we've got Overwhelm, which I want to mention here since we're talking about a bunch of boss monsters with a high amount of levels here. Overwhelm is a counter trap that says activate only while you control face up level 7 or higher monster that tribute summoned. Negate the activation of a trap card or monster effect and destroy that card. So can be pretty good if you're bringing out like Greed Quasar in the natural way. But frankly, a lot of these monsters don't tribute summon out. So you got to find some other way to use this thing. There are monsters that potentially you play it with, but these monsters are probably not it. Next up, we got Proof of Powerlessness. There's a normal shot that says activate only while you control a face-up level 7 or higher monster. Destroy all face-up level 5 or lower monster your opponent controls. Monster you control cannot attack this turn. If you activate during your opponent's turn, then you don't need to worry about that restriction. And honestly, even if you activate during your turn, if you've done it for a good cause, then I don't really think it's that bad. But yeah, this can pair with both the tribute monsters here, but also just synchro monsters in general. So I think this thing is pretty good. And we're on the topic of tribute summoning. I got to talk about Emperor Sem, a level 4 light fiend, 1300 attack, 20 defense. So each time you tribute summon a monster, each player can select one monster from, or one card from their graveyard and return to the top of their deck. Now, this is kind of awkward because if your opponent can benefit from it, they get that there. And also, it's not that beneficial for you because, like, you don't really want to be stacking the top of your deck with things. You kind of want to just add it to hand so that way you get a draw next turn. But if you do want to play it, you can play it, I guess. Yeah, it's not really that good in my opinion. But we've been talking about monsters that are in the main deck that have high levels. Let's talk about the synchro monsters instead. So before we talk about the next synchro monster I want to talk about Road Synchron first with the level 4 machine tuner, 1600 attack, 800 defense. It says when using this card synchro material for the synchro summon of a monster other than Road Warrior, reduce this card level by 2. If this card attacks at the end of the damage step, increase the level by 1 until the end of this turn. Anyway, wondering what Road Warrior is? Well, it's a monster that you can only make with Road Synchron and 2 or more non-tuner monsters. 3000 attack, 1500 defense point. Level 8 synchro there. And then once per turn, you can special summon one level 2 or lower warrior monster or machine monster from your deck. So you can bring out a monster from your deck. Is that good? Probably not. But it's something you can play and build to. This was in like a starter deck. I really don't think that I don't think this is that good. Just too many hoops to jump through for a card that's like relatively mediocre and with an effect that's like pretty bad. So I don't really think it's that good. But maybe there will be some warriors or machines that, you know, pair with this that are better than I expect. I don't know. Next up, we got Level Warrior on the topic of modulating your levels. And Level Warrior is a light warrior, 300 attack, 600 defense. So if there are no monsters on the field, you can normal summon this card as a level 2 monster. If your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand as a level 4 monster. So this guy is kind of interesting. You can, you know, either normal summon him regularly as a level 3, but you could also do it at a level 2 if there's no other cards on the field. And you can even do it at level 4 as a special summon. So kind of there to modulate the levels for your synchro plays. However, most decks are designed in a way that like their synchro plays are set up with the levels available. So you don't really need this thing and the flexibility it provides most of the time. But interesting card for sure. Next up, we got Tuning Wear, level 1 light machine, 100 attack, 300 defense. And so this card can be treated as a level 2 monster when used for a synchro summon. If this card is sent to the graveyard for a synchro summon, draw 1 card. Pretty good. This is, I guess, a card that you can bring out off of Road Warrior. But you know, again, most decks don't really need that flexibility there. But it is something you can play if you want to. And the draw is also pretty nice. Next up, we got Emissary from Pandemonium, a level 7 tuner, which is a first, I think, which is an Earth Fiend. 2600 attack, 1800 defense. So this card now can be special summon. You can normal summon this card with 1 tribute, and if you do its level becomes 5, its real attack and defense are halved. That's generally what you're probably going to be doing with this thing, because level 7 tuner is not really that good. You can't really go into much in this format unless you like synchro off with a level 1 monster, like actually Tuning Wear actually you could synchro summon off with. But I think this thing is not really that good because you can't special summon it either way. So yeah, not the best card in the world. Next up, we got some more ways to modulate the level. We got Star Blast, a normal spell that says pay any number of life points in multiples of 500 reduce the level of one monster you control, or that is in your hand by one for each 500 life points you paid until the end phase. So this is a way to just set up your monster to come down, either by, you know, reducing the level on something like a Barbaros or Reticulin or whatever you want to just normal summon out without tributing, or potentially just setting up for synchro play as well. So I don't think this thing is terrible, but it's not really the best in the world either, because as I mentioned, most decks have plans for getting out their monsters if they're big enough, or for synchro summoning with their just main combo lines. So not really worth it. Level Retuner is even worse than normal trap that says reduce the level 1 face-up monster control by up to 2. There is some decision in how much you reduce it, but the monster has to already be on field, and it's a trap, so you can't really use it too proactively, so it's just not really that good. Continuing with the trend of level modulation, we've got Give and Take. There's a normal trap that says special summon 1 monster from your graveyard to your opponent's side of the field in defense position. Increase the level of 1 monster you control by the level of the special summon monster until the end phase. So kind of a jank way to modulate level. I don't really think it's that good. But maybe you want to give your opponent a specific card, like for Rose Tentacles, for instance. Give them a plant, attack into that, do stuff like that. But frankly, this thing is not really that good. But it's one of a series of cards in this format, or that came out recently, that actually give your opponent things or take things from them. So that's the give and take right there. Nightmare Archfiend's 1 normal trap is attribute 1 monster. Supposed to summon 3 Nightmare Archfiend tokens. Fiend type Dark level 6, 2000 attack, 2000 defense to your opponent's side of the field in attack position. Each time one is destroyed, its control takes 800 damage. Many would say that that's not a good trade to make because you're giving your opponent very powerful monsters. But if you use something like Owner's Seal or remove Brainwashing, you get to take control of them again and then attack in with them. So you could potentially manipulate this to your advantage. And maybe that's a reason to play Give and Take as well. Turn capture is a normal trap that says activate only when your opponent synchro summons a monster. Special summon one tuner monster used for that synchro summon from their graveyard to your side of the field. So this can give you a tuner and that you can use to make more plays. However, the awkward thing is that it will happen, during your opponent's turn, most likely, because that's when synchro summons happen. So, yeah, it's not really the best because they can just deal with it there, but it is kind of interesting to see. Bone Temple Block is a normal trap that says discard one card, special summon one level 4 or lower monster from your opponent's graveyard to your side of the field, and your opponent special summons one level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard to your opponent's side of the field. The monster is destroyed during the end phase of the next turn, so your opponent will likely have some time to play around with it. Although if you activate this during your opponent's end phase, then you can sort of prevent them from getting much value out of it. But it's kind of interesting. I don't really think it's the best thing in the world unless your opponent has really good things engraved. Again, it's kind of a situational card, kind of like the Fake Feather and the Blackwing section that I talked about. But when it does come up, it could potentially be pretty good. Next up, we got Vengeful Servant, an equipped spell that says when control of the equipped monster changes, inflict damage equal to its original attack to its new controller. This compared to something like Mark of the Rose, which came out in the last set. And, deal damage to your opponent. But keep in mind that this will also deal damage to you if you're using on something like Mark of the Rose. So you got to be careful with this. And effectively, this is just a burn card that's very, very situational. There are better burn cards that you can use instead. Next up, we got Scanner, the level 1 light that modulates level again. We're back to that theme. I'm jumping around with the themes here, but give me a break. It's like 2.5 hours in, at least. So, give me a break on that a little bit. Machine, question mark attack, question mark defense says once per turn, you select one of your opponent's monsters that are removed from play until the end phase. This card's name is treated as the selected monster's name, and this card has the same attribute, level, attack, defense as the selected monster. If this card is removed from the field while its effect is applied, remove it from play. Now, here's a question: how does this work? If you don't copy an opponent's monster, what's its attack and defense? Question mark, question mark. I assume that defaults to 0/0, but that's not answered here. I don't know. It's a very strange card. I don't think this card ever sees much play because it's very, very situational again, but kind of a weird card to have there. Anyways, for the last level modulation card I want to talk about, we've got Descending Lost Star, a normal trap that says target one synchro monster in your graveyard, special summon that target in defense position, but its effects are negated, its level is reduced by 1, and its defense becomes 0. Also, its battle position cannot be changed. So this is mainly used for synchro ladder plays, most likely, where you bring back a synchro monster, then you sync into another thing with that. So, not the best thing in the world. It's not terrible, though. It's kind of like Call of the Haunted in a really bad way. But it is here, so it's something good to know about. For a better Synchro Revival card, we get Wicked Rebirth. This is a continuous trap that says activate this card by paying 800 life points to target one synchro monster in your graveyard. Special summon an attack position. Its effects are negated. Also, it cannot declare an attack this turn. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. When that monster is destroyed, destroy this card. Now, this is a bit better because you actually get to do stuff with it. You can attack with it, even if you can't attack this turn. You can just activate during your opponent's end phase, get around that very nicely. And so this is basically a Call of the Haunted. Of course, it negates the effect, which is kind of awkward, but it's still, I think, better than nothing, Now, if you're playing Wicked Rebirth, it's continuous trap, so you can actually play Magical Planter with it, which is a normal spell that says send one face-up continuous trap you control to the graveyard, draw 2 cards. So this allows you to, sort of send Wicked Rebirth to the grave, draw 2 cards, and go from there. There are other continuous traps you can pair it with as well. And it's not the only card to actually pair with continuous traps as well in this set. Trap Eater is another card that can pair with continuous traps, although this one pairs with your opponent's continuous traps. Level 4 Fiend Tuner, effect, 1900 attack, 1600 defense. Cannot be normal summoned or set, must be still summoned from your hand by sending one face-up trap your opponent controls to the graveyard. This can be very useful against things like Light Imprisoning Mirror or Shadow Imprisoning Mirror if you're playing a deck that's really hosed by that. Or if you're up against a stun deck, like playing Gravity Bind and stuff like that, you play Trap Eaters on the side, bring them in, and then you eat those traps. It is a tuner as well, and a tuner with a decent amount of attack, so you can likely go into synchro play after you do this, and that's pretty good. So it can also out Oppression as well, which is nice as well. For more continuous traps, though, we get Graven the Super Ancient Organism. There's a continuous trap that says level 6 for higher special summon monsters on the field cannot declare attacks, nor can player activate their effect. That can lock down your opponent's synchro plays if you want it. We've also got Attack of the Cornered Rat. This is a continuous trap that says if a level 3 or lower normal monster you control battles, during the damage step, you can pay life points in a multiple of 100. The attack of the opponent's monster reduced by the amount of life points paid that you paid until the end phase, and you cannot pay more life points than the attack of the opponent's monster. Now, The better card here, just Prideful Roar, even though that doesn't stick around for longer. It's just much less situational. This thing is so situational that I don't think we'll ever see play. But it's kind of interesting to see it here. Speaking of normal monsters, we got Natural Tune, a normal spell that says select one face-up, level 4 lower monster, normal monster you control. It's created a tuner monster while it's face-up on the field. You could do that with a Cloudian Smoke Ball, as in the image here. Or you can do that on any of your normal monsters. I don't know why you're playing normal monsters in your deck, but maybe you're playing for Natural Tune. If that's the case, just play a tuner monster with that level instead. That would be my advice. And speaking of tuner monsters with different levels, we do have a fair amount of tuner monsters left to cover. Let's talk about them now. Chaos Endmaster is probably the best of the ones remaining. Level 3 Light Warrior Tuner. 1500 attack, 1000 defense. It says when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sets the graveyard, you can spell summon one level 5 or higher monster with 1600 attack or less attack from your deck. The one that you're generally going into is probably Sphere of Chaos. It's a dark level 5 machine, 1600 attack, 0 defense. But while it's on the field, it's also treated as light. Once per turn, this card cannot be destroyed by battle. And then when this card is tribute summoned, you can add one level 3 monster from your deck to your hand. So I think that these two were kind of meant to pair together. You either bring out the Sphere with the Chaos Endmaster, or you bring out the Chaos Endmaster with the Sphere by searching it and then bringing it out next turn. So I think these two pair well, and also they can make 8 levels, which can go into Light End Dragon, a level 8 Light Dragon Synchro monster made with 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuner light monsters, 2600 attack, 100 defense, and at attack declaration, if this card battles another monster, you can have this card lose 500 attack and defense permanently, and the monster this card is battling lose 1500 attack and defense until the end phase. Not the best effect in the world, but you can just get over an opponent's monster with it, so not the worst thing either. Now, the next card is a bit controversial because you can also go into Dark End Dragon, depending on if you're playing this format with it or not, because Dark End Dragon was a prize card. There weren't really many released in the format at the time. So if you're looking back on the format, you can argue that, it should not be played. Kind of like how people argue that Crush Card Virus shouldn't be played in things like Perfect Circle or things like that. Although here, I think there's a little bit more merit to that argument because I think there were less than 6 copies of this total. So that means that people could not play this, players facing off against each other, no matter how skilled they were, could not have 6 total copies to actually play 3 on each deck. But we go by Format Library's formulation of this format, and they include Dark Armed Dragon in the format, so we are playing with it in the format as well. Make sure that if you are playing this format in a different group, ask whether they include Dark Armed Dragon or not, just like ask if they include Trag or not, I mentioned earlier. Because different people might give you different responses. But in Format Library, they play with Dark Armed Dragon, so that's what we're going with. And Dark Armed Dragon is cracked. Very, very good card. It is a level 8 Dark Dragon Synchro, made with 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuner dark monsters, 2600 attack, 100 defense. Once per turn, you can target 1 monster opponent controls, and this card loses exactly 500 attack defense. And if it does, send that target to the graveyard. Very, very good effect. Clear away your opponent's things that could be a bit more problematic otherwise. And yeah, it's just a lot of attack as well. So you make either of these with the Chaos Endmaster and Sphere of Chaos, so I think that's kind of a neat combo. I think it's kind of intended for those 2 monsters, so I like that a bit. For the other synchros, we got Hyper Synchron, a level 4 light machine tuner, 1600 attack, 800 defense. Said if this card is sent to the graveyard for the synchro summon of a dragon type monster, that monster gains 800 attack, also banish that face up monster during the end phase. Seems really bad. I don't know why you'd make a dragon with this because you're just losing it, and that's a lot of value invested and lost. But if you're going for a game push, I guess I could see it. But you could also just make things that are not dragons with this and be fine that way. Next up, we've got Dark Tinker, a level 2 Dark Fiend Tuner, 1000 attack, 1300 defense. Says when this card you control is sent to the graveyard, look at the top card of your deck, return that card to either the top or the bottom of the deck. I think that's fine. It's not a game-breaking effect, but it allows you to sort of scry the top card of your deck, and if it's a bad card that you don't want, you can put it on the bottom. So that way, hopefully, you get a better card next. So it's not terrible. Level 2 on a tuner is not bad either. So yeah, it's fine. It's just not the best thing in the world. And also, it can make synchros that maybe Hyper Synchro cannot, because there is a level 4 synchro in the format, Armory Arm. Armory Arm is a level 4 machine synchro, 1800 attack, 1200 defense. Says once per turn, you can either target 1 monster on the field, equip this card to that target, or unequip this card and spell summon it in attack position. While equipped by this effect, that target gains 1000 attack. If that target destroys a monster by battle and sent to the graveyard, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. Now, you actually can do an OTK with this thing and Colossal Fighter. If your opponent has a monster with over 1800 attack, you can equip Armory Arm to that monster, summon out Colossal Fighter, attack the Colossal Fighter into your opponent's monster, and basically Colossal Fighter will keep dying. Armory Arm will keep inflicting damage to your opponent equal to the Colossal Fighter's original attack, and the Colossal Fighter will keep coming back. So you can just do that forever and kill your opponent. Now, this is theoretically limited by the amount of life points you have as well. So you need to make sure you have enough life points to actually attack the Lost Fighter in enough to actually, cause you to win. But this is a very, very devastating combo when it goes off, and it is indeed legal in this format. It will not be legal in later formats based on ruling changes and things like that, but in this format, it is indeed legal. Now, moving on from the tuners, we've got cards that relate to the tuners. Power Tuner is a level 4 Water Dragon, 1400 attack, 1000 defense. I could have talked about this in the Dragon section, but it doesn't really relate to dragons. It more relates to tuners because this card gains 500 attack for each face-up tuner monster on the field. So if there are 2 tuners, this goes up to 2400. That's a pretty good attack stat. Now, the downside of that is if you've got multiple tuners on field, you're probably making synchro plays, because the tuners in general are not the best outside of making synchro plays. So this thing will likely not be buffed up most of the time, but it is interesting to see here. And I don't know, maybe you want to build an all-tuner deck that just plays this thing and buffs it up entirely. I don't know. Next up, we got Mind Trust, normal spell that says, attribute 1 level 2 or higher monster, add 1 tuner monster from your graveyard to your hand, who levels less than or equal to half the attributed monsters. So you can do that with something like Dark King Hundes, attributing to add back a Dark Resonator if you want to, like the card art says, or you just do it on just any other monster, I guess. I don't know, it's not really that good. It requires too much cost to actually get a monster back, and you've attributed your monster, so if that's the only monster on the field, you can't make a synchro play this turn. I feel like Monster Reincarnation is just better in most ways, but you can play this if you really want to, I guess. Next up, we got some other just spells that slow down the game a little bit, because I think there were actually a fair bit of those for whatever reason. So let's talk about them now. Calling Magic, the normal spell that says this card can only be activated at the start of the main phase 1. During the main phase and battle phase of this turn, neither player can summon monsters, so that stops you from doing synchro plays. So I don't know why you'd really do it. But I guess you're worried about like maybe Glad Beast, or maybe you're worried about your opponent having Psychic Tuning to bring back a monster in their battle phase, or, whatever that synchro, whatever the normal trap that lets you synchro summon in battle phase is. Maybe you're worried about that. Calling Magic can help, allay your fears in that regard, although I don't really think it's that good. It also deals with like recruiters, I guess, as well. So if you're playing against a recruiter deck, that can be good to see as well. But I don't know. It's just not really that good overall. Next up, we got Supremacy Berry, the normal spell that says if your life points were lower than your opponent's when this card was activated, gain 2,000 life points. If your life points were higher than your opponent's, you take 1,000 damage. So it's basically gain 2,000 life points most of the time. There are very niche scenarios, I guess, where you'd want to take 1,000 damage, but most of the time it's just gaining life points. And for that, it's not a bad card by any means, but life point gain is generally not that good in Yu-Gi-Oh! So it's important to note there. Next up, we got Half or Nothing, a normal trap that said during your opponent's battle phase, except during damage step, your opponent chooses one of these effects, have the attack of all monsters they currently control until the end of the battle phase or end the battle phase. So kind of an interesting effect. It could be like a Waboku, sort of, but your opponent gets the choice of which one they want to do. So I think it's neat. I like it. I don't think it's the best thing in the world. Like, there are better battle traps, but this is one of them that if you want to play something neat, you can play this. Speaking of slowing down the game a bit, in battle, we got Fortress Warrior, level 2 Earth Warrior, 600 attack, 1200 defense. You take no battle damage from attacks involving this card, and then once per turn, this card cannot be destroyed by battle. I remember getting this card. It was super shiny. I liked it a lot. Not the best thing in the world, but it is kind of fun just to sit on it. But yeah, it's not the best. It can maybe set up for synchro play later because it survives a battle, and then you synchro with it, but overall, not really that good. Next up, we got Rockstone Warrior, level 4 Earth Rock, 1800 attack, 1600 defense. You take no battle damage from battles involving this card. When this attacking card is destroyed by battle set to the graveyard, it's supposed to summon 2 Rockstone tokens, which are just Rock Earth types, 0 attack, 0 defense, and the tokens cannot be attributed for a tribute summon. This is basically a worse Dandelion. It can slow down the game a bit by giving you 2 monsters instead of 1, but you have to do the attacking, so it's not really that defensive of a card. Yeah, it's not really that good overall, I don't think. Next up, we got Prevention Star, an equip spell that says equip only to a monster you control if it was changed from face-up attack position to face-up defense position this turn. Select one monster your opponent controls. That monster cannot attack or change its battle position when the equipped monster is destroyed and this card is sent to the graveyard. Remove from play the selected monster. So this can allow you to banish a monster that your opponent controls in a kind of convoluted way, but it's not terrible. I don't know. It's not really that good either. So this is what you use in the anime, though, as well, so it's kind of cool to see another anime card get ported over here. Next up, we got a counter trap, Shining Silver Force. Counter trap that says activate only when your opponent activates a trap card that inflicts damage. Negate the activation of that card and destroy it in all face-up spell traps your opponent controls. So this can deal with, like, Floodgate spell and traps, I guess, but, like, I don't know. I'm not really sure it's that good. I guess, again, Burn Dex is good, but, like, other than that, not really worth playing. Next, we have Spell of Pain, a quick play spell that says when your opponent activates a card or effect that will inflict damage to you, your opponent takes the effect damage from that card or effect instead. So again, this is for the anti-burn. I think that if you want anti-burn, Shining Silverforge is a little bit better, but Spell of Pain also does the job. And speaking of other cards that just kind of lock down the game a little bit or invalidate certain game plans, we have Dimension Fortress Warrior, a level 4 dark machine, 1700 attack, 200 defense. It says cards cannot be sent from the deck to the graveyard. It's mainly stopping Lightsworn, I guess. But it can stop other things that want to like Foolish Burial things into it, like zombies, right? But it's mainly just stopping Lightsworn. Nextly, we've got actually a very interesting card here that is a bit more fair at stopping what your opponent's doing than some of the other things here, and a bit better than a lot of the cards I've talked about in the latter half of this section. That's Snowman Eater, level 3 water, aqua, 0 attack, 900 defense. So if this card flip face up, target 1 face up monster on the field, destroy that target. Now this card sees a lot of play in things like Hero Beat decks in or Diva Hero decks in Edison format, but here there's not really too much you can do with it. It's still fun to have though. It's kind of like Man Eater Bug, but a little bit better. Because it's got actually a defense that is pretty good. And so yeah, I think it's neat. But it is also an aqua, which would pair it with Hydra Viper, which maybe I should have talked about this card in the typo section of the video, but it doesn't really support aqua things. It uses aqua things to attack. Because this is a reptile with 1800 attack, 400 defense. It says each time this card declares an attack, you must tribute 1 aqua type monster. This card can attack 3 times during each battle phase. So this thing can attack in a lot, but you need to have aqua type monsters, equivalent to its appetite. And that's a bit hard to find a lot of the time. This thing not really that good. But if you want other things to attack multiple times, we got Twin Sword Marauder, a level 4 dark, once per battle phase. If this card attacks a defensive monster, it can make its second attack in a row. If this card attacks a defensive monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. 1600 attack, it might not get over that defensive monster, but it is still an interesting card at least. So it's neat. I like it. I don't know. It was in the anime, so that's probably why I have a lot of attachment to this card. Is it good? Not really, but it's still fun to play around with, I guess. Ebon Arrow is a normal trap that also can do some piercing. It says select 1 face of monster you control until the end phase. It loses 500 attack during battle between the attacking monster and defensive monster whose defense is lower than the select monster attack. Inflict difference as battle damage to your opponent. That's what they called piercing back in the day. And then when the selected monster destroys a monster by battle set at the graveyard, this turn inflict damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's original defense. So basically what you're doing is you're attacking into a monster, and it's literally just going to deal the attack of your monster minus 500, which is not that good, but it's something, I guess. I don't know. I don't really think it's that good overall. Next up, we got Miracle Locust. Speaking of cards that affect the attacking defensive monsters, Miracle Locust is a normal shot that says target 1 face-up attack to a monster you control. Your opponent draws 1 card. Also, that monster gains 1000 attack until the end of this turn. If it does, it can make up to 2 attacks on monster during each battle phase of this turn. If it attacks or is attacked this turn, your opponent takes no battle damage from that attack. So, this can allow your things to get over things that your opponent have, but you're not doing a ton of damage there. Also, you're giving your opponent an extra card that they draw. So, this thing's not really that good in my opinion, but it's something that you can play if you want to get things over other things, and maybe you pair it with something like Pride of the Week, which is a continuous spell that says when a level 2 or lower monster, you can destroy its opponent's monster by balance of the graveyard. If you have no cards in hand, draw 2 cards. So maybe you just use it to get a level 2 monster up above an opponent's monster, and then you draw 2 cards for this. Convoluted combo, but maybe it's something that can happen. I don't know. I don't really think either of these cards are that good, but it's something you can play if you want to. Lastly, I got 2 cards that are not bad. It's just I couldn't really figure out how to weave them into the narrative I put here. Although my narrative kind of fell apart as, the length of the stream caught up to me. But these are interesting cards at least. Synchro Change is a normal spell that says remove from play 1 face-up synchro monster you control. Special summon 1 synchro monster from your extra deck whose level is the same as a removed monster. Its effect is negated. So it's basically just switching out a synchro for another, but that monster has no effect. So not really the best in my opinion, unless you want to switch out like a Stardust for a Red Dragon Archfiend or something. But yeah, it's not really that good in my opinion. Next up, Swallow Flip, the counter trap that says negate the activation of effect monster's effect that activates when a monster is false summoned, including itself, and destroy it. So yeah, I mean, this is good against like Glad Beasts, really, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. There's a variety of things that this can hit. Is it the best thing in the world? Probably not. But is it a very, very niche counter trap that maybe sees some play against certain decks? Maybe. I think there are better things to put in your side deck than this, but it is something you can play if you want to. But that's going to do it for all the new cards added to cat format. Wow, that was a long one. Not quite done. I showed off the cat deck earlier. I want to show off one more deck before closing out the video. So let's dive into that now. The last thing I want to show off is this Blackwing list by Archetypes here. Now, I could have actually used the winning list from the actual SJC Indianapolis that happened at this time, what I figure, Blackwing is a deck that's experienced a lot of change over the years, as Edison has sort of hyper optimized it in that format. And so I think a lot of the things that Edison optimized have been carried over to this list here. And this list looks very, very clean. This was the winning list of the latest cat format tournament that was held on Format Library, which was a small tournament, all things considered. It was 7 people, double elimination in a single day event. So, you might say like, oh, Blackwing doing that is a bit of a fluke, but I will say that there were only 2 Blackwing players who showed up with Blackwings, and they got first and second in this format. So, take a grain of salt because, again, it was a small tournament, but I do think that Blackwings is pretty good in this format. I think this is a pretty good starting list if you want one to start with. And it sort of just shows how to play the deck. You're playing Acres Attack as well. Tribute your Winged Beast to pop things. Bottomless mainly for, I think, probably the Blackwing matchup, but you can also use it to hit things like Air Bellums, brought off Rescue Cats. There's a lot going for this deck, and it's very, very good. So if you like this deck in Edison, you probably like this deck here because it's sort of like full power Blackwing. So you get to play it on a much stronger field than Edison will provide, which some people like, some people don't like. Some people like the level that is at an Edison and think this is a bit too crazy because it is kind of crazy. You can do multiple Gale, you can do multiple Bora, just stack things. I mean, you can do multiple Bora in Edison, but multiple Gale is the big thing, and that is kind of wild. So, if that's not for you, it's not for you, but if you're kind of intrigued by it and want to see what this format is like, when you can sort of just play full power Blackwings kind of, and just play full power a lot of other stuff, and this might be the format for you. So definitely give it a check out. I'm going to be releasing more videos on it in the future. This one took me a bit longer to make, but the ones coming up should be a bit simpler because it's just playing games in the format and going over my thoughts on it. So I'm excited to dive into it. I hope you are too. If you like this video, definitely subscribe to the channel. Leave a like down below to help grow the content even further. If you want to play games in this format for yourself, head over to the YGO from Zero Discord server, linked in the description down below. If you want to support me directly, I've got a Patreon, linked in the description as well. And as always, big shout out to my patrons, Rinsman, Porkchop Coon, Bread Knocker, Tyler Compton, GeoMyFest, Dump Truck, Scout Zero. And I believe that's it right now. But, if I forgot anyone, I'll put them up in editing. But, after 3 hours, the brain starts to lose some stuff. So I'm going to sign off here. I hope you enjoyed as always. And until next time, I've been from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off. Peace.